how's it going? And welcome to Unveiling Reality. Tonight, we are going to take a deep look at the origins of MKUltra mind control. What is what? How's everybody doing? What the fuck is this one? I don't know. That's my intro. What do you think of it? Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, Nadar. Welcome, TR. Welcome, T3. Daisy and Grim. Hope you're here. How's everybody doing? So we're going to take a look at MKUltra from the start. There's a lot of information out there. And hello Rumble, by the way, too. I'm watching you. I got my my live chat popped out over here, so you guys are in there too. Much more going to be going on with Rumble in the future here. Need to give that platform some love, and really, we'll be doing a lot of stuff over there. Like Saturday night, just a heads up, if we're winning Saturday night this week, we're going to be doing a watch along of a new documentary about the face of Anonymous. I found it very interesting. I really wanted to. Oh, thanks, dude. Yeah, I'm old school. What can I say? Yeah, so it's a really great documentary, and again, it's all about like putting things right and kind of getting the facts together. There's a lot of people out there that have their stories about what Anonymous is and what they think it is, but don't really understand the origins of it or where it really kind of like came into the mainstream, right? So that's a really interesting documentary. We're going to watch that probably exclusively on Rumble, but we'll meet up here on YouTube and we'll do our introductions and hang out. And I'm going to have Moose Maneuver on with me, so that'll be great. First time having him on. He's a good friend, and we're going to have a good time kind of checking out the origins of Anonymous and just just chatting. And really, it'll be open, man. So anybody else that may want to join that knows me and is interested in the topic, just let me know. Drop me a line. You can certainly join me and Moose. Absolutely. So yeah, that's going to be winning Saturday night, and I'm hoping to turn that show into more of like a, I really kind of picture it as like a kind of like a Letterman show kind of thing. Like I'll have to get a top 10 list together or something, but guest and comedy and fun and kind of laid back. And I got all the serious topics during the week, right? So we're at work during the week, and then we play on the weekends. Coming next week as well will be the debut of Repairing History, the new Thursday night show. And that is going to be very interesting as well. It's going to be based on the works of Thomas Sowell. I believe this is part of solution culture in the sense that this is the type of educational approach we need to take. We need to get this type of information back into schools, back into the curriculum. And we need to start repairing the history, because there's a lot of omissions and exaggerations and that really affect the narrative that children grow up with about the world. And that's what things like CRT thrive on. And the fact that we're missing this critical information that Thomas Sowell has dedicated his life to putting out there is exactly the reason why. So we need to make sure that we are aware of this information and we're talking about it, and that we put it back out into the consciousness of the our civilization, because without it, it's an easy formula for abuse, and it's an easy formula for subversion to take hold. And we're trying to disable those type of mechanisms, right? We remove the enablement as our approach to a peaceful solution, because all things are out there by enablement or by consent, and that is enablement. So understanding that puts us in the mind frame that our solutions don't have to be radical. They don't have to be violent or in the streets or optic driven or anything like that. Some methods may mean that way at times, but all in all, it's just about understanding and then making choices. And then the choices are just to find ways to remove the enablement, make decisions that and put in solutions that do that in a very civilized way. Those are the type of solutions that last. Those are real root cause solutions. So that's what we work on. But as we dive into MKUltra and mind control, I'm going to pull the retrospective up here real quick. The old retrospective board. We got to go to that. I just want to highlight it on there, and also highlight the fact that repairing history is a big deal in us putting in solutions ourselves, right? So understanding, hey, when you ask for it, what to ask for, right? What do we need to kind of fix the history lessons that we're getting, the skewed kind of 18, was it 1866 or something? I don't know what they're calling it, whatever it is, that CRT version of stuff that is been polluting minds and destroying identities, really. That's the first really nicking someone's identity, is when they get told they're not what they think they are, and that they're something else, and the world views them in a negative light because of the way they look or the way that they are. So it's like that's one of the things that they get to people with early. So not having that in place is important. Hold on a second, please. Thank you. All right, sorry about that. All right, so let me go ahead and share this out. Take this shit off. All right, share. All right, here you are. And then of course we go out, we scroll out and to the first veil. And so Ultra Mind Control, right, is something that we see kind of coming from the legacy of it, is a leftover kind of project, right? It was all about mind control, and it was all about trying to catch up with the world in terms of mind control, because the perception is that was at the time was that that the communists had perfected mind control, and that we were lagging behind. So this big concerted effort came out in order to try to figure out this methodology, right? Especially came on after the Korean War. What we're going to watch tonight is a documentary, and it is we're going to do like a watch along, Mission Mind Control. It's from 1979, and you'll notice right away that the journalism and the approach to this type of documentary is much different than what we're seeing these days, and it's pretty wild. It kind of makes you wonder about like the onset of like really subversive media. Like, it's really just taken off and it's out in the open right now. So we're going to go ahead and get this started, but I wanted to kind of highlight where it was. There it is. Okay. And the cycle of abuse of third veil, right? So this these industries right here, right, are all part of this right here, right? The military industrial complex, the deep state intelligence agencies, and to a sense, some of these other aspects of it, right? But they are the ones in the the institutional psychology institution, and so on. We're all kind of part of this MK Ultra, but it was really pushed by the military industrial complex for the purposes of war. So we're going to highlight this tonight, and to see if we could actually institutionalize or find a way to actually do the same things that we believe other people were doing. All right, so that's right there. I'll work on that and I'll highlight it. And also, let's see. Yes, right here. So right here, yeah, there's the Thomas Sowell real history, and I'm going to change this up to the repairing history. Yeah, repairing history, and it's just an idea of these kind of pillars of repairing education. I just put, like I told people, if you haven't been here before, I put the names just to kind of give us a reference point. It doesn't have to be Ron Paul's philosophy of liberty, but the philosophy of liberty, like he was out there rejuvenating during his runs, and that's really what he wanted to do with his runs there for president, is get that out there. Okay, so let me stop sharing that, and let me get back over to, how's everybody doing? Anybody? Remember, hey, if you have something to say or want to ask me a question or make a comment to me, please at me. Otherwise, probably think you're talking to someone else. But hey, Lady Autumn, how you doing? But I'm going to keep a close eye on it because we're just going to be kind of watching along the night. And again, this is a great documentary. It is it's got a lot of good information, and if you're kind of like cloudy on the subject of MK Ultra, this is going to take you back to the very beginning and kind of give you an idea of where it started from. Also, where people got their ideas from. Hey, Suzanne, how you doing? Welcome. Also give you an idea of where people are coming from when they say the word. I think the word itself gets kind of, like a lot of words these days, kind of gets blown out of proportion, right? When people use MKUltra just lightly to explain any kind of mind control, they're off base. And I think it kind of it gets people's idea of what it is off balance, right? And when it's off balance, you'll either think it's bullshit across the board, or you'll think it's in everything. And I think we need to understand that. And that's why I say MKUltra Legacy, is because it's not going on anymore, right? It's like people might want to argue with me about that, but the truth is that it was a project, right? And the project had a beginning and an end to it. And as you'll see in this documentary, a lot of people are talking about it, and they'll tell you that, the essence of what it was, they got their information out of it, and they kind of just moved on from it. But the legacy of it is still kind of active, I believe, in the cycle of abuse. People still use, or they still use tactics and methodologies and psychologies that they've learned through this project. So the legacy of it, I believe, is still around, but the actual practice of it is very much a done deal. But let's get this started, because I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. And again, if you have any questions, just at me, and you can stop and talk about any parts. I probably will stop at some points and just kind of make comments, but otherwise, enjoy. There we go. Turn it on now.
This is the story of a 30-year search by U.S. intelligence agencies to perfect mind control. Some of those engaged in that search have agreed to talk about it for the first time. One said, "I think every last one of us felt sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line." The search would be endless. From brothels, an agent says, we learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom, to the mystical rites of a magical mushroom ceremony performed by an Indian shaman, to a Spanish bull ring. The bull has had electrodes implanted in the brain and is controlled by a scientist. There would be victims. One intelligence agency tried to peel this man's mind back to reveal its deepest secrets.
I'll live through it.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, "It was fun, fun, fun." This is the story of the search for mind control.
ABC News Close-Up, Mission Mind Control. With ABC News correspondent Paul Altmaier.
Flight 217, now boarding at
Mark?
Anne,
It's been ages.
can I buy
Allow me. 2 Michelob Lights.
Michelob makes a light beer?
Perfect. The good taste of Michelob Light. Don't just compare it to other light beers. Compare it to your regular beer. It's that good.
You always did go first class.
Your ticket to San Francisco.
Thank you.
San Francisco?
You too?
Good taste runs in the family.
Mrs. Cooper, I need help. With all these different dog foods, I don't know what kind to feed him. Dry, soft.
Honey, it's not the form, it's the formula. Those are for any dog, young, old, whatever. But Cycle 2 dog food
is especially for dogs ages 1 to 7, like mine.
The Cycle 2 formula has just what dogs in their active years need to help stay healthy.
And happy. With Cycle, I know what to feed him.
Now get Cycle 2 in 25-pound bags.
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that we know.
Right.
But these records that we've uncovered don't tell the story. They tell pieces of it.
This is a story that has been told in bits and pieces. This is an attempt to pull most of it together. We know we don't have the full story. We do, however, have some striking new revelations and insights. The story begins here, just off the nation's front yard, the Mall. The buildings behind me were the headquarters for the World War II Office of Strategic Services. It was here that the first halting steps toward mind control began. The shaper and molder of OSS was General Wild Bill Donovan. He said of his group's work, "We may have made mistakes, but we were not afraid to try things that were never done before." In this anything-goes atmosphere, Donovan appointed this man, Stanley Lovell, a Boston industrialist, to break new ground in many scientific and technical fields. Donovan called Lovell his Dr. Moriarty, after the fiendish professor in Sherlock Holmes. Lovell liked the name and posed for this Saturday Evening Post photo. He later wrote of his OSS job that it was, quote, to stimulate the PEC's bad boy beneath the surface of every American scientist and to say to him, throw all of your normal law-abiding concepts out of the window. Here's a chance to raise merry hell. It was in this atmosphere that the search for mind control began. This bizarre man would be an active participant in that search over the next 2 decades. His name is George White, an OSS captain who had formerly been with the Bureau of Narcotics. In his diary, seen here publicly for the first time, White left a legacy of the darker side of American intelligence work. He received his early OSS training at the British-run school at Oshawa, Canada, the same school where Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, was trained. White referred to the school in his diaries as the Oshawa School of Mayhem and Murder. Mike Burke, former OSS colleague of White's and now president of Madison Square Garden Center.
Very compelling fellow, mysterious fellow, almost mystical fellow. He was fascinating because you knew something about him, but not enough about him to really get a fix on him. He also knew a great deal about the swifter elements of society, the gamier side of life. And he was very impressive in his technical knowledge of the underworld, so to speak.
He said, one of our men gets beat up. He says, you have to act real fast and teach these guys a lesson.
Charles Siragusa, a former narcotics officer and friend of White's.
He'll come around, he says, and break your kneecaps. And with that, one guy laughed, and George would always have a little Billy with him. And this one guy saw us naked. George White turned around and whapped him across the neck with it. Then he picked up a pool stick and started beating everybody up.
He made his point.
And he made his point.
George White was not a man of understatement or subtleties. His boss at OSS, Stanley Lovell, referred to him as deadly and dedicated. In this note from White's diaries, it says, call Lovell regarding TD. TD was a rather transparent cover for Truth Drug. George White worked with the Truth Drug Committee here at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in the nation's capital. They experimented with mescaline, scopolamine, and marijuana on unwitting victims. The committee soon learned there was no easy panacea, no truth drug at this stage. But White and later colleagues would not stop trying. The goal remained the same. As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
Okay, so we got an idea here where they're going at first with this. And so that was always my impression too, that the idea behind MKUltra Mind Control was to be able to kind of like snap someone into a different kind of ultimate beast killer mode. Hey, no problem, Lady Autumn. We'll be right here. We'll be right by your side. Hey, G Jenner, how you doing? Welcome. See anybody else pop in here? Nadar, welcome. If I hadn't said it already, welcome again. I'm pretty sure I did, but welcome again. All right, so we'll pick it back up here. But so far, very interesting stuff. And just kind of keep in mind what the premise they were working off of it is, and kind of like where it led.
But it was a discovery.
Oh, and by the way, at the end of this, we're going to check out another 20-minute video on the on this exact thing going on in Canada. So it's just the project itself expanded outside of our borders to neighboring countries, particularly Canada. So we're going to kind of take a look at what they were doing up there in Canada with the with this kind of this funding here.
Discovery here in Basel, Switzerland, at Sandoz Laboratories by Dr. Albert Hoffman, that led the intelligence agencies of America to believe that they had found the panacea. The discovery was lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. The film that you see is considered by many experts to be the closest illustration of the effects of a hallucinogenic.
Okay, that's bullshit. I'm calling bullshit right here. They didn't do a good job with this at all. Or they, you know, it's changed. I have no idea, but yeah, it's not that's not it at all right there.
It was one of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew anything about.
John Gittinger, recently retired chief psychologist for the CIA. This is the first time Gittinger has been interviewed publicly.
We could disable a whole city by putting a very small amount on a water supply. After all of these years of us, those of us who are involved in looking for this secret drug, this was the only thing that began to look for the first time like it might be something like that.
The CIA's interest in LSD was intense. The worry was that the Russians would get hold of it.
Were the Soviets into LSD?
I'm going to have to say I'm sure they were, but if you ask me to prove it, I've never seen any direct proof of it.
But at one point, intelligence information received from Switzerland said that Sandoz Laboratories was about to put 100 million doses of LSD on the open market. And it caused enough concern within the agency that the United States was prepared to buy the entire supply. However, a slight mistake had been made. The mistake is made public for the first time.
I just found out on a new CIA document that there were no such large quantities of LSD on the market.
John Marks has filed numerous Freedom of Information suits against the CIA and has unearthed much new material. He is the author of The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, a history of intelligence agency work with mind control. He is a consultant for this report.
What happened is that there was a military attaché in Switzerland, an American officer, who got milligrams and kilograms mixed up. In other words,
Freaking
he
metric
made the
system.
mistake of thinking 1/1000th of a gram was the same as 1,000 grams, which is a mistake of 1,000,000 times. So when the CIA got the intelligence that there were 100 million doses on the market, in fact, there were 100 doses.
Let that sink in for a second. This is why you can't, this is why government should never be trusted with anything.
The man who would oversee the CIA's research into drugs and most of the agency's behavior programs is this man, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist. Dr. Gottlieb declined ABC News' request for an interview. In their never-ending search for the miracle weapon, CIA operatives searched here in the remote mountain areas of southern Mexico for what up to then had been considered a myth, magic mushrooms. They used this man, a part-time chemist for the CIA, to dupe this man, a vice president of a bank and an amateur mycologist or mushroom expert, to try to get to the magic mushrooms and turn them into a drug. But it would be the amateur, R. Gordon Wasson and his colleagues, who would win the race and develop the drug psilocybin from the magic mushrooms.
We went into the Mazatec area, far from the highways, remote from Mexico City. There we found that rotten bagasse, as it's called, bagasso, covered with mushrooms. These mushrooms I didn't know, had never seen. They were the sacred mushrooms.
Wasson would also discover and record the ancient mystical rites of the mushrooms from a local shaman or magical priestess, Maria Sabina.
And we were seeing incredible sights. They would go slowly or they would go fast as I ordained. All your senses are rendered acute. We say that you see visions, you see hallucinations, but that doesn't begin to tell this story. The hallucinations are only part of it. You hear sounds, you smell things. The night was thrilling.
Word of Wasson's discovery reached the CIA quickly. Dr. James Moore, a University of Delaware chemist, secretly served the CIA preparing deadly chemicals on short notice. Moore was instructed to get close to Wasson and accompany him on another trip to Mexico to get the magic mushrooms. Internal documents show the CIA felt a drug derived from the mushrooms could remain an agency secret.
What in the world were they looking for with the magic mushrooms?
I think the best answer to that is that they were looking for fundamental information on compounds that would be capable of causing changes in behavior, changes in mental attitude.
Did you ever consider what would have happened if any of these substances were given to, say, unwitting people?
Oh, I don't remember having considered that specifically.
What if you, I trust perhaps you've thought about it.
Well, I haven't worried about it. Your question again, what would I have thought had I known that
any of these substances would
have been given to
unwitting persons?
You mean a hostile agent of another government?
No, I mean
that was probably one of the things I had in mind.
Testing it out.
Is this guy a bad liar or just stupid? I watched it the first time. I couldn't figure it out myself. What do you guys think? Let me know.
An American citizen.
I guess I must seem very, very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that issue.
But many drugs were tested in this way. A decision was made at the highest levels of the CIA to do testing on unwitting Americans. As one CIA document says, such testing would be operationally realistic. A former CIA official who worked on these programs describes for the first time how the decision was made. He did not wish to be filmed or recorded. Thus, his remarks are read by someone else.
I think
Their
every
idea of
last
acid
one
is
of
so
us felt
funny.
sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line. Every decent kid knows he shouldn't steal, but he does it sometimes. We knew damn well we didn't want anyone else to know what we were doing.
The decision was made to do testing on unwitting victims. It was decided they should be on the fringes of society because they were most vulnerable.
It was the borderline underworld. Prostitutes, drug addicts, and other small-timers who would be powerless to seek any kind of revenge in case they found out.
And as their predecessors had a decade earlier, the CIA turned to George White for help. White was now a high-ranking narcotics official. And by this time, the stories about George White were legendary.
So the waiter says, "You may help you, monsieur?" And George White was busy talking with me. I paid no attention to the waiter, so the waiter tapped him on the shoulder, says, "May I help you, monsieur?" George White turned around, whipped his gun out, and stuck it in the guy's face like this in this crowded restaurant.
George White did not mind bending the law, and he knew the street well. He was the ideal choice for what the CIA had in mind.
We were Ivy League, white, middle class. We were naive, totally naive about this, and he felt pretty expert. He knew the whores, the pimps, the people who brought in the drugs.
White set up so-called safe houses for the CIA in New York, here in Greenwich Village, and later in San Francisco, in this hotel, and in an apartment atop Telegraph Hill with a commanding view of San Francisco Bay. While the existence of these safe houses was disclosed last year, details of what took place within them has not been told. A former CIA official who worked in the safe houses reveals that they were used not only for drug testing, but to study sexual behavior and how it could be used to manipulate people.
We did quite a study.
If you guys remember early in our journey here, we were talking about the Yuri Bezmenov stuff, right? And he was talking about how most of subversion is just it's just information gathering, right? So here we see like the actual kind of implementation of the same type of same type of program. Like this whole project in MKUltra, for the most part, outside of the active parts of it, the 5% of it is a lot of intelligence gathering. Just keep that in mind as we go along here.
Of prostitutes and their behavior. How do you take a woman who is willing to use her body to get money out of a guy to get him to talk about things which are much more important, like state secrets? We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom. We started to pick up knowledge that could be used in operations.
There would be victims in all of this, but as the agency knew, they couldn't fight back. Some entries from George White's diaries. Clarice gets horrors. Janet, sky high. As one agency memo says, we have no answer to the moral question. The safe houses were not the only testing grounds. Millions of dollars would be spent on LSD research at universities throughout the country. And word would begin to spread on campus about this so-called mind-blowing drug. And suddenly, there was the counterculture of the 60s.
I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Dr. Timothy Leary, the 1960s Johnny Appleseed of L.
When I was in college, Timothy Leary came and spoke. He did a debate against G. Gordon Liddy. It was pretty cool, I guess. I enjoyed it. And even though I was like, kid at the time and rooting for Leary, I do remember that G. Gordon Liddy was impressive and that he made a lot of great points, and didn't seem as far off the mark as I was led to believe. But yeah, I've seen old Timothy Leary live here.
LSD.
The CIA funded and supported and encouraged hundreds of young psychiatrists to experiment with this drug. The fallout from that was that the young psychologists began taking it themselves, discovering that it was an intelligence-enhancing, consciousness-raising experience.
I know that some of the studies in which the CIA had supported used as subjects people who later became strong proselytizers of LSD. So, in that sense, yes, I think it did sustain the perpetuation of the use of the drug. And it's rather ironic, isn't it?
The counter case that I would make in relationship to that is to remember that the people who were doing the research were people who would be doing the research regardless of who was the sponsor. I don't think anybody working in that time in the remotest ever thought that it would blow up into the kind of thing that it did.
History will judge the role of the CIA and other intelligence agencies in unwittingly contributing to the counterculture of the 60s through their intense interest in LSD and other hallucinogenics. But for the moment, at least, the argument can be made that the CIA helped usher in the age of Aquarius.
ABC News Close-Up will continue in a moment.
So check this out. Check out these 70s commercials. I was debating whether to skip through these or not, but I mean,
plain aspirin sometimes upset my stomach.
take a trip back if you remember some of this stuff,
I'm careful about what goes into my body.
or if you've never seen
Aspirin
it.
gives me an added relief action I want. Tylenol doesn't.
Only one leading tablet has both, an added relief action in many cases that Tylenol never provides, and protection ingredients, bufferin.
Now I'm careful to get both with bufferin.
Good old VHS tape.
Your sink trap's clogged with grease. Use Crystal Drano.
I'll pour in liquid plumber.
Don't. It may not work on that grease clog.
No?
Crystal Drano will. Look, liquid plumber's quiet. It's not melting.
Good old day commercials. I can fast forward these if you guys don't want me to, but just let me know.
Hurt metal pipes?
No.
I'm watching you, chat. I'm watching you.
I'm switching to Drano.
Is anybody there?
Plugs go. Better use Drano.
Saturday live on ABC.
The Forest Hills Men's
Okay, I'm gonna put a
on the
poll out
legendary
then.
West Side Tennis Club. Then live, third round coverage of the most prestigious ladies golf event. Hollis Stacey goes for her third straight U.S. Women's Open title, and red hot Nancy Lopez shoots for her elusive first Open victory. And on ABC's Wide World of Sports, rodeo excitement from the Wild West.
Look at the rodeo.
Speeds, high thrills, hydroplane action, championship tennis, golf, and ABC's Wide World of Sports Saturday.
Wednesday on 8 is Enough.
8 is enough.
The Bradford girls go disco crazy.
Hey, hiya.
Just go crazy.
Down. And the
Oh yeah, that
summer
always
love
works.
red hot starts. And Charlie's Angels play the horses,
I want to be a jockey.
but end up in a dead heat with death.
Ooh, a dead heat with
The
death.
ghost of Jack the Ripper haunts the back streets of Vegas.
Tomorrow, starting
Did
at
she just
8,
wipe blow off her
Central
nose?
and Mountain on ABC.
Hey, Steel Stargazer, how you doing?
Covering a span of history such as we are in this report, one can get sidetracked by the so-called glamour and mystery of espionage work or by the exotic qualities
Duly
of some
noted,
drugs.
Suzanne.
But what you can't lose sight of is what all of this would mean in terms of individual human beings. There would be deaths, there would be long-lasting and harmful effects. The best-known case is that of this man, Frank Olson, a chemist employed by the Army Chemical Corps, who in 1953 was slipped LSD unknowingly at a meeting with CIA officials.
That's always fun,
Shortly
huh?
after that, Olson went into severe depression. He ended his life at this New York hotel by diving through a shaded closed window in his 10th floor room.
Jeez.
Frank Olson was the first known fatality in the CIA's LSD program. Olson left behind
Remember
a
that
widow,
for the quiz
Alice,
later.
and 3 children, but it would be years before they learned the real story of his death. Shortly after his suicide, Alice Olson was visited by Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the man who had administered the drug, and by Robert Lashbrook, his deputy, who was the last person with Frank Olson the night of his death.
It was probably to check me out and see whether I was handling myself and handling the situation, whether I was hysterical. And I'm sure they left the house feeling ever so much better because I had been gracious and hospitable to them, so that I must have played right into their hand and made them feel fine.
23 years later, how did you feel about that meeting?
My anger was unbelievable at how I had been duped for this length of time, and the anguish which was unnecessary.
Anyone who knew during all of those years never told Alice Olson the real story of her husband's death. She would discover it by accident more than 2 decades later. In essence, it was a 22-year-long cover-up.
Hey, Chris, how you
Lyman
doing?
Kirkpatrick was
Welcome.
Inspector General of the CIA at the time of Frank Olson's death. But had not the Olson case occurred within the secret confines of the CIA, would not this case have been a prosecutable case? Perhaps
Definitely, I
manslaughter.
would think, very definitely prosecutable, and certainly from the point of view of the of Mr. Olson, why it should probably have been actionable.
Frank Olson's suicide slowed down the CIA's testing of LSD and other drugs, but only momentarily. The CIA was not the only government agency interested in the possibilities LSD and other drugs presented for mind control. The Army Chemical Corps first started working with the CIA and then branched off on its own. It too tested drugs on unwitting victims, and a death would result. The case of this man, Harold Blower, a tennis pro, seen here with his daughter Elizabeth, is well known. In 1953, Blower was a private patient at the New York State Psychiatric Institute. He was given 5 injections of a mescaline derivative that was being tested secretly for the Army Chemical Corps. With the 5th injection, Harold Blower died. As with the Olson case, a 22-year cover-up followed, until finally the Army admitted the real details of Blower's death. Since the initial news stories of Harold Blower's death, close to 5,000 documents, previously classified, have been released by the Army and obtained by ABC News. They provide valuable insight into Army activities at the time of Blower's death and where the Army went from there with their own drug testing program. From a previously classified deposition of Dr. James Cattell, who administered the mescaline derivative, on the purpose of the drug testing. to produce symptoms similar to those that you see in schizophrenia. On how much the patient knew about all this. We didn't delineate all the possibilities of what might happen because then you contaminate your experiment. Cattell then relates that he never even knew what drug he had given Harold Blauer because of the secrecy of the Army experiments. We didn't know whether it was dog piss. This was secret. This was a secret. We weren't in on it. We asked Blauer's daughter Elizabeth for her reaction.
What? How can anybody react to that? I mean, and it's so far from what you'd expect from a human being, never mind a doctor, never mind a professional specialist who's supposed to care about people's minds. It's unbelievable.
A suit filed by Elizabeth Barrett against the Army Chemical Corps is now pending in federal court. Other Army experiments continued on mental patients around the country. Work done at the Tulane Medical Center in New Orleans involved several drugs, hallucinogenics, and electrodes implanted in the brain. The chief researcher was Dr. Russell Monroe, now head of the psychiatry department at the University of Maryland. These are various progress reports written by Dr. Monroe and recently obtained by ABC News. From one of the progress reports, a report of a woman who had electrodes implanted in the brain and was then given LSD and other drugs. She became agitated, cried, lapsed into a trance-like state. Felt as if she were about to have a convulsion, experienced waves of darkness and light, had bizarre sensations in her neck and legs, said somebody was trying to manipulate her body. At this point, Dr. Monroe wrote that the woman was obviously having paranoid ideas. As a layperson, perhaps you can enlighten me. What therapeutic effect would the type of experiment that I just described have on a patient?
Well, the therapeutic effect would be indirect.
Was this patient aware that she was being given LSD?
Yes, I mean, they were told that they would be given some medication, and they should have
Specifically LSD?
Well, we told them, I don't think that they would have even known what LSD was then at the time. They were told that they were going to they would be given some medications which might make them feel worse.
Dr. Monroe, what do you think the Army Chemical Corps was looking for in all of this testing?
They were looking for an incapacitating agent, an agent that would not harm the person permanently, but would incapacitate them temporarily. That seemed like a humanistic way to wage a war, if war is necessary.
When James Thornwell was given LSD by Army intelligence in 1961, this time it was no experiment. This time, the express purpose was to peel back Thornwell's brain to bear any secret within it. This time, the Army had gone operational. Thornwell, as reported on ABC last January, was an Army private stationed in Orléans, France. Classified documents were missing from his unit. Thornwell became a suspect. His 2.5-month interrogation included administration of sodium pentothal, hypnosis, isolation, and deprivation of sleep. Army documents obtained by ABC News refer to this interrogation as conventional. Despite this severe questioning, Army intelligence was getting nowhere with Thornwell, and it was decided to slip him LSD. For 16 years, Thornwell never knew what had hit him. Tell me about the acid.
I'd rather not. It's a bad trip. It's a bad trip. That was a bad trip. The pain was so excruciating. Felt like somebody was sticking me with 1,000,000 pins. You know, just everywhere. Oh, it just...
Dude, I would imagine that the grade of LSD they were giving him was like, so, oh, thank you so much. We got $5. Thank you so much. Pocket Trash and Treats. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And by the way, yeah, the memberships will probably be refunded here pretty soon. I think I got the time lapsed on that. So Anybody that was a member on YouTube will get getting a little bonus back. We'll find a new way to move forward. One thing that comes to mind as I'm watching this is like, well, when did we ever like try just to dose the whole other army? Like that could have come in handy in Iraq or something. I don't know. I was just thinking, why not just spray them down with LSD and see what happens? It's like they're willing to do that to the people for the point of warfare. Why didn't they ever deploy it in warfare? I don't know.
You want to start for me? I walked around. You want to start? Oh, I can talk. I lived through it. I lived through it.
No charges were ever brought by the Army against Thornwell. He was discharged for psychological disorders. But an Army psychiatric evaluation of Thornwell obtained by ABC News, one which was done prior to Thornwell having been given LSD, says of him, fairly cooperative, oriented, alert, and gave no evidence of psychosis or depression.
Still, if they had done that, man, people probably would just be throwing a party and listening to music. It was like these days, right?
From the Army's point of view, this type of LSD interrogation was a success. Other documents refer to the exploitability of interrogation subjects, cracking them, keeping them off balance mentally, and providing an economical, speedy, and productive aid to interrogation. From James Thornwell's point of view, it was no success. Thornwell still has serious problems. He's run through 2 marriages. He maintains he can't hold a job, can't concentrate, has nightmares, and feels socially and emotionally isolated. Last fall, Thornwell filed suit against the government in federal court. In a moment, we will examine the closest experimentation to brainwashing that we have
Yeah,
uncovered.
right. Don't ever trust the officials. All right, commercial time. Let's see what we got here. Will Rogers Jr.
Crying out loud. Something wrong, Will? You pick up a paper these days, you learn life isn't as simple as it used to be, and neither's food. Is that why you eat grape nut cereal? Yep, you couldn't ask for a simpler cereal. Wheat and barley, vitamins added, no preservatives. Sure looks simple. It's got a natural nutty taste.
What's good for breakfast,
Wheat and barley. It's
How
like
about something
wheat
nice
and beer.
Grape nuts, the simple cereal.
Maxwell House's coffee you can count on.
Maxwell House. Good to the last drop.
Maxwell House is good every time. Maxwell House is good coffee. Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
Maxwell House, coffee you can count on. Always smells good, always tastes good, always good to the last drop.
Maxwell House is
Good news.
good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
ABC News Close-Up will continue in a moment.
I think to remind you.
Baseball, the Yankees take on the Angels Friday night on ABC.
This is a heavy-duty stick-up, and this is a good place for it.
New heavy-duty stick-ups from Airwick for small places with big odors.
This is
That might have been in Jersey.
District Police
Oh, yeah.
have charged a young Northeast woman with the weekend kidnapping of that day-old baby. Sources say the woman was pregnant and afraid she'd lost her own child in the accident, and that's what motivated the kidnapping. 'Twas the night before Skylab, and we'll have the latest on its fate and ours. Testimony before Congress today on battered wives. Some of the victims are battered wives. A rock and roll star put on probation for income tax evasion. The condition is he must put on 1,000 hours of concerts for charities. And we'll be talking to a local teenager who won a gold medal at the Pan Am Games. Join us at 11.
He's like, okay, sure, I'll do it. I'll put on 1,000 hours. No problem.
Nothing else tastes or feels quite like Mountain Dew, or goes down as smooth like a soft breeze on a lazy afternoon.
Like a soft breeze on a lazy afternoon. That's what I think of when I think of Mountain Dew. Oh man. And by the way, Body Armor Edge, if you have a soda addiction, Body Armor Edge, go buy it today. It'll get you right off of it.
Estate called Ravens Crag, halfway up Mount Royal in Montreal. It houses the Allen Memorial Institute of Psychiatry of McGill University. It was here that the CIA funded a series of experiments, severe experiments. The work was done by the Institute's then director, Dr. Ewan Cameron. It is the closest experimentation to brainwashing yet disclosed. His work, unprecedented in psychiatry, consisted of 3 areas which he called sleep therapy, psychic driving, and the ultimate depatterning. Dr. Maurice Dongier, current head of the Allen Memorial.
These are the 3 like pillars of what the MKUltra experiments were about.
So-called type of therapy, he would give the patient intensive electric treatment in order to make the patient regress deeply, become forgetful, and then he would attempt to implant new ideas in the mind of the patient.
Now, to a layman, it would appear that Dr. Cameron was trying to take the slate and wipe it clean, the slate being the mind. In other words, brainwashing.
Exactly, that's a very good
1979, Chris.
Yes, too
Val Orlico of Winnipeg, Canada, the wife of a member of the Canadian Parliament, was a patient of Dr. Cameron's. She entered the Allen Memorial Institute because of severe depression. She describes for the first time publicly the LSD therapy and psychic driving treatment that she was given by Dr. Cameron.
And then the drug began to take hold very rapidly because it was an IV injection. And things became very.
Can you imagine having
blurry
an IV injection
and,
of acid?
Very frightening.
Holy cow.
And had a lot of sensations that it's very difficult to recall. Nobody explained it to me. Nobody ever asked me if I was willing to do it or anything.
He had this feeling that he would be able to get through the resistance of illness and to reach deep changes very quickly.
Did he?
I don't think that when you look at that in retrospect, the hopes that he had have been in any way fulfilled.
But Cameron would plunge on. The next step was what he called psychic driving. This involved almost endless tape-recorded messages and more drugs for the patient. Cameron wrote that this was the way to make direct controlled changes in personality.
I thought this was the coldest and most impersonal treatment that anybody could give to anybody in the world. And I became more and more despondent and more angry. I just became so despondent that I thought I can't live like this any longer. And I thought I would just go out and throw myself underneath the cars on McGregor. I stood on the curb of that street and I stood there and I thought, okay, go. Okay, go. And then I thought, what if you're not killed? What if you're just maimed? What if you don't die and you live and you can't even talk anymore? And I couldn't do it.
The most severe technique Cameron used was depatterning. He described it as breaking up the existing patterns of behavior by means of intensive electroshock therapy with prolonged periods of sleep. He carried out these experiments in something he called the sleep rooms.
People in there were like babies. They cried and they were very disoriented. And we were very afraid of the sleep room. We used to walk very carefully against the side of the corridor that was opposite the sleep room with our backs to the wall when we'd go by.
Cameron used this combined sleep electroshock treatment on patients as long as 30 days. One patient he kept asleep for 65 days. Cameron retired, and his successor, Dr. Robert Cleghorn, ordered a follow-up study on the patients treated with Cameron's depatterning method.
Showed that it was no more beneficial in its result than the use of more conservative methods.
But the follow-up study showed that 60% of those who had been depatterned still had amnesia for periods of anywhere from 6 months to 10 years. That's quite a memory loss, isn't it?
That is a memory loss. Indeed it is. It's I think, more than desirable.
In retrospect, does Dr. Cameron's experimentation and his treatment appear harsh?
I would say yes. I mean, this forceful type of approach that I was describing to you is definitely, it can be said that it's harsh.
I wouldn't call it harsh. I would say it was harder on the staff than it was on the patients, because these people had to be fed and they had to be cared for and they had to be given sufficient fluid and food and toileted and so on and so forth. It was a very difficult thing for the staff to follow these patients properly and see that they did well.
Well, I'm glad he was concerned for the staff. But damn it all, I wouldn't. I could have maybe had a different kind of life. And that makes me angry and sad, and I don't know how to explain how I feel, really. I just.
How did you feel when you learned that Dr. Cameron's experimentation was financed by the CIA?
Well, I thought, oh, I can't even use the word that I thought, because I thought, that bastard. And he was too smart. He knew who he was working for. And, excuse me, but I just can't, sometimes I can't believe it. And yet I know it's true.
If you had the opportunity to say something to the people at the Central Intelligence Agency who financed this study, what would you say?
I realize the CIA is a very important organization and they have a very important job to do. But God, it surely doesn't have to be done on people who are.
Thank you, Pastor. I hope you feel better, man.
Knowing what's
Good days
happening
are in front of us.
or having any defense against
Thank
it.
you again.
And I
Take care.
can't imagine the mentality of people who would do this. I just can't.
As for Dr. Cameron, he died in 1966 while mountain climbing. A colleague wrote of Cameron, "For him, the ends justified the means. And when one is dealing with the waste of human potential, it is easy to adopt this stance." Dr. Cameron seemed ideally suited for what the CIA had in mind.
America is adapting to the shape of things to come. Triumph TR7 with 5-speed transmission or optional automatic. Wide steel belted radials, front disc brakes,
Commercial time.
front end spoiler.
Look at that. Woo!
Steering.
Those cars absolutely sucked.
No other sports car looks like
Those
it.
cars
No other
sucked.
sports car drives like it. Triumph TR7.
My Mustang would just take those things down in a second. Back in the day, that is.
Hey, don't worry. They just got lucky. I'm sorry. I let us down. Forget it. We'll beat them next week. No, I really let us down. Come on. How about a Michelob Light, huh? Michelob makes a light beer? Sure.
The good taste of Michelob Light. Don't just compare it to other light beers. Compare it to your regular beer. It's that good.
This Michelob Light is great. Hey, you know what our real problem was today? Yeah, you were terrible.
Good taste runs in the family.
The many roles I play call for many hairstyles. So I use hot curlers, blow dryers, things that can be brutal to hair. I switched from one conditioner to another looking for help. Then came Alberto VO5 hot oil treatment. It works just like a salon hot oil treatment, but takes less time and money. I just heat a tube, smooth it in, and shampoo. My hair's left silky, shiny, more manageable than I ever dreamed. Alberto VO5.
All right, so how many people here have used the Alberto VO5? Tam, how you doing? Woohoo! Awesome to see you.
There's a scandal in the 12th when Wojo gets a roommate.
Hi.
In a Barney Miller special.
So how many people here have used the Alberto VO5 hair treatment? I just want to know.
Authorities say this Texas motorcycle gang murdered a federal judge.
People are always scared of something they don't understand, and they don't understand us, so they're scared.
Geraldo Rivera investigates dope, death, and the banditos on 2020. Thursday starting at 9, 8 Central and Mountain on ABC.
It was the Cold War, and especially the trial of Joseph Cardinal Mindszenty, who was forced to testify in a Hungarian court that he was a spy. And then later, the Korean War, with the coerced and mainly fraudulent confessions of American servicemen.
My generation took place on the...
That would spark intense interest in intelligence circles about brainwashing. The CIA secretly commissioned a study of communist brainwashing methods at the Cornell University Medical Center. A leader of that study was Dr. Lawrence Hinkle. He explains first the Russian method of controlling and breaking a person.
Absolutely.
Okay, pay really close attention to this part right here.
Absolutely isolated from everyone else, with one man whose job it is to get you to write the extent to which you are a criminal. In this setting, you can get people to do most anything, do you see? Because you don't have to lay a hand on them. And by the time you get through and you go up before the judge, the fellow says, "Were you a spy?" He says, "Yes, I was a spy." The Chinese never really had this kind of a state police system. They would get him in, and all this fellow does is ask you to write, rewrite, and talk to him about your whole life. Graduated from pilot training in 1949.
While the purpose of the study was to find out about communist brainwashing techniques, CIA documents show that the agency was interested in developing mind control methods of its own to precondition and control Chinese living in this country to be sent back to their homeland as CIA agents. What do you think they were looking for?
Well, I think they weren't looking for agents or anything like that.
Yet the agency's perception of the work you were doing, in CIA documents we have examined, it says that the project that was being done here, they intended to use everything learned about the new agents to induce them to, quote, to perform acts of a complex, purposeful nature.
Yeah, but that was
the
never
effects
done.
of which may be out of keeping with the individual's
That
previous
sort
behavior.
of thing was never done. Those people were not. That was when they first came here. The first people they sent up to see us, you see, were operational type people from the CIA with some rather wild ideas.
Okay, this is their perception of it. If I could
No,
just
it wasn't
continue.
their perception of it either. No, it wasn't.
Dangerous to his being, contrary to any previous consciously expressed intentions and interests, contrary to the good of the individual, and subversive to the goals for which he is
I
consciously
understand
working.
all this talk. But the situation was, you see, those things were never done because of wise people on both sides. We not able to do this nor interested in it.
They were, though.
Some of the low-level people were, but the high-level people were not, to tell you the truth.
But documents clearly show that the CIA was attempting to develop agents over whom they had as much control as possible. Agents who would perform tasks contrary to their own good.
Normally conditioned American who's been trained to kill and then to have no memory of having killed. His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has been dry cleaned.
Is a Manchurian candidate, controlled by others to do things against his will, possible?
It was a remarkable film because, as far as I'm concerned, it made something totally impossible seem absolutely credible.
I would say the answer is yes, but there are many qualifications to that.
Dr. Milton Klein, a psychologist, a clinical and experimental hypnotist, and unpaid consultant to the CIA.
The qualifications would be the subject selected to produce the kind of behavior that you wish, the amount of time, the procedures that are utilized, and the motivations of the people who are designing, executing, and administering the procedures. You're asking whether an individual can be, under hypnosis, influenced, coerced, persuaded, shaped to perform an antisocial act, or a destructive act, or an act of violence. My answer would be yes.
Captain Marco, will you be good enough to lend Raymond your pistol, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Ben.
Sure, kid.
Shoot Bobby, Raymond. Through the forehead.
Yes, ma'am.
How valuable a tool can hypnosis be in the intelligence field?
None whatsoever. It has absolutely no use because nobody's ever been able to do that I know of, do it in an operationally feasible way. I'm not in any way saying that hypnosis doesn't take place. I'm not saying there's nothing to it.
I would say that most government agencies concerned with intelligence operations have been looking to hypnosis as a tool for a variety of purposes, one of which is to carry out and to execute certain intelligence operations on a basis where they would not have to rely completely on some of their own emotional reactions. Actually,
Would that entail murder?
It could, if you consider that an act of killing someone under circumstances of war is murder. I think one has to define what that means.
Under circumstances of peace.
Under circumstances of peace, it would be murder.
Another former CIA agent says that Fidel Castro at one time was considered as a possible target for a Manchurian candidate.
Castro was naturally our discussion point. Could you get somebody gung-ho enough that they would go in and get him? But if you have 100% control of a guy, you have 100% dependency. If something happens and you haven't programmed it in, you've got a problem.
So in the end, it was decided that a Manchurian candidate was not feasible. But the search for mind control continued. But could the mind be controlled? Perhaps not. But is human behavior predictable? In this area, the CIA did make a significant breakthrough. A personality assessment system designed by the agency's chief psychologist, John Gittinger. It comes close to being able to predict how humans will behave.
It's really a descriptive system, an attempt to try to describe personality in a relatively systematic way so that hopefully you can get some kind of an idea to predict what the behavior between different kinds of individuals.
Gittinger's system had many uses in intelligence work. One was to draw personality portraits of world leaders. Using Gittinger's system, the agency concluded the Shah of Iran is a brilliant but dangerous megalomaniac whose basic problems resulted from an overbearing father. And there were other applications. Your assessment staff played a key role in helping other governments pick their police intelligence agencies, including, we've learned, the Korean CIA, Uruguayan National Police. Can you tell us about this?
No.
Author John Marks,
the former #2 CIA man in Uruguay, told me how in 1966, John Gittinger and an assistant traveled down to Uruguay and gave the tests in order to select members of the Uruguayan intelligence service. A psychologist who used to work for the CIA told me in 1961 he personally traveled to South Korea as part of an American CIA effort to set up the Korean CIA and to give the personality tests to candidates for the Korean CIA to choose the best man for their secret police.
But one of the basic functions of Gittinger's system was finding the vulnerabilities of an agent, a double agent, or a potential agent. In its applicability to intelligence work, isn't the PAS system looking for a person's soft spot?
Well, of course, the answer to that is yes, but I hasten to say soft spot. This is what I consider a negative word.
Of the hundreds of behavioral projects undertaken by the CIA, Gittinger's appears to have been one of the more successful and more conventional. Other experiments were not as conventional. Neurophysicist Dr. Jose Delgado was financed by the Office of Naval Research. In this experiment, the bull is sedated. Electrodes are implanted in its brain. Delgado transmits an electronic impulse to the center of the bull's brain. Delgado has remote control of the animal. Recently released CIA documents refer to the feasibility of remote control of animals, and that special investigations will be conducted toward the application of selected elements of these techniques to man. Other areas were examined through the 60s and 70s. Brain surgery, psychosurgery, creation of amnesia, parapsychology, manipulation of genes. Even though past and present CIA officials have indicated this kind of work ended in 1963.
Whole truth, not but
And one of those who took part in these programs.
Thank you, sir.
In 1977, the Senate subcommittee heard testimony from many of them, but the testimony was not that revealing. According to one of them, they agreed amongst themselves to keep the inquiry within bounds that would satisfy the committee. Former narcotics officer Charles Siragusa says that he was asked to limit his testimony by the man he reported to at the CIA.
He wanted me not to say anything.
To perjure yourself.
That's right. Well, either that, I'd have to perjure myself or take the Fifth Amendment. And I'm not about to take the Fifth Amendment for anybody.
Okay. Former CIA chemist Robert Lashbrook testified he had no first-hand knowledge of the agency-run safe houses when in fact he supervised one of them. And according to George White's diaries, was at a safe house when White conducted what he called an LSD surprise experiment. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, whom we recently filmed
Surprise,
near his
you're
California
tripping.
home, oversaw many of the
Jeez.
CIA behavioral programs. He retired in 1973 and destroyed the records of this work. In sort of a valedictory letter, Dr. Gottlieb wrote that he and his colleagues had been able to maintain contact with the leading edge of developments in the field of biological and chemical control of human behavior. Dr. Gottlieb also testified before the Senate subcommittee, but from an anteroom where he could not be filmed because of what his lawyer termed health and cardiac problems. Dr. Gottlieb declined ABC News' request for an interview. And what of George White, the man who helped the agency in so many of its programs? He would retire here to Stinson Beach, California. And shortly before his death, he wrote to his boss at the CIA, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and summed up his career by saying, "It was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, and cheat, steal, deceive, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest?" Has mind control been achieved? From all of the available evidence, it appears doubtful. The human will has prevailed up to this point. But as we have seen, work is continuing in this field, work that we still don't know very much about. How deeply are the Russians and other dictatorships into all of this? We really can't say, and the CIA is reluctant to give out information about it.
Just for reference, this was made about a year or two, maybe three before the Uri stuff that we've watched. So just keep that in mind.
But the basic question remains, what place does all of this have within a democracy? One final point should be made. As one of the persons who worked on these programs told us, we are very capable, conscientious, and very dedicated scientists working for our country. Their work speaks for itself. This is Paul Altmaier for ABC News. Good night.
Here's a great idea.
And a few commercials to end.
Hair curler. It's Vanish Bowl Freshener. Freshness in a snap. Snap it under the rim and it freshens two ways. It's always there to freshen. Then when water hits it, extra deodorizer and detergents are released, working best when and where you need it. When the bowl's fresh, the bathroom's fresher.
Snappy idea. Vanish Bulk Freshener.
Vanish for a cleaner bowl and a fresher bathroom.
Anybody still using Vanish?
What do doctors recommend for pain today? This report shows doctors' #1 choice is the pain reliever in Anacin. 5 million recommendations last year for pain of headache, backache, minor arthritis, and muscle ache. The ingredient in Anacin is the doctor's #1 choice. Anacin is strong, a special combination of medical ingredients free of stomach upset for millions everywhere. The ingredient in Anacin, doctor's #1 choice.
We won't tell you what it is. All right, so there you go. Mission Mind Control.
Stay tuned for local news next. Then live.
I guess that's me. So what did you guys think of that? Let's talk about it. Interesting, huh? I don't know how many of y'all have seen that or knew much about it, but going back to the origins of all this is always interesting. Of course, you know, we're watching what at the time, you know, I guess it was a bit more respectable mainstream media. It seemed like we don't get reports like that today. It seems like a lot more staged than actual interviews with primary sources. So you get a lot more secondary sources and whatnot. But I'd imagine there's a bit of sway in that one as well. What do you guys think? Do you guys pick up on anything? We've been watching these things together and learning about this stuff for a while now. So I definitely want to hear what you guys have to think. That was pretty. Got more? Yeah, I do actually. I do have more. I was going to show some of the stuff about Canada in a little bit more detail, but I just noticed that towards the end, it's a lot of what we just watched. I was kind of like, I don't know. I do have an interesting one that kind of ties into last week. That is right up the same alley. So I'll tell you what. Let me get this straight here. Stop sharing that. All right, and I'll put it out there and see if you guys want to take a look at it. It is. Let's see. It is called "The Cult with CIA Ties." We did watch a good series, a good interview the other day, or I guess a good presentation the other day about how a secret society took over the entire country of Italy with the CIA's help. But it might be a little too many steps away from what we're doing right now. We have some more CIA stuff inside the CIA on company business. I watched that. That was pretty interesting. But I do have a couple Fifth Estate 20-minute, 30-minute episodes on the MKUltra program in Canada. So let me get back over here where I can see you. All right. So what do you guys think? Yeah, I mean, it did seem some subdued. Talking Trash and Truth says no way the news program is totally honest and free to say whatever. They weren't as sensational as news today, but still under someone's thumb. I mean, I would say that I felt like there was some reservation around, anything moving forward. But I think that the terminology for Project MKUltra, it's all about trying to figure out if they could, how mind control works, right? And I think what they came out of this with is an understanding that you don't need to use these type of maybe it helped them understand this, I don't know, but you don't have to use these types of techniques to control someone's mind. You just have to control the narrative or that surrounds their belief systems, and you can do that. And you can do that through entertainment, media, language, of course, and other things like other types of social pressures and mechanisms and so on, right? That psychology was a lot more effective than the introduction of drugs or force or anything foreign, really, because the human brain OS has exploits built into it. Because it wasn't built to anticipate this conscious kind of battle going on between people who see the world one way and people who see it the other, or people under different types of conditions, right, that have disabled parts of their humanity to the point where they don't understand what is something good or light and what is something dark or bad. And we're dealing with that on a grand scale today. Yeah, that's kind of like built in to the species a little bit there. Damn. No, that's great. It's great that you're still catching up. Yeah, it was early 80s, like 1979. Mhm. Yeah, those are great. So yeah, I would say that the residual effects of like the LSD introduction and how it bled into society and formed the counterculture and a lot of the ideas and the new agey kind of stuff that came out of that was interesting and it kind of bled into some of the culture stuff we were talking about as well on the darker side of it. But the idea that government and the pursuit of domination, I guess, or just trying to keep up with foreign powers, right? The kind of world we live in, enacted this type of cultural change. It must have been very eye-opening to them at the power that they yielded. They might not even. I don't want to give them too much credit by saying that they, could scope all this stuff out, like they can read the future or they are some kind of like geniuses. There's a difference between determination and genius, I guess. But I think that they play a lot of jazz, and I think that they adapt to what they're seeing, and they've learned to kind of just know how to create possibilities, I guess, as a way to say. Fentanyl, yeah, that's a horrible drug, horrible. It's a big problem. It's crazy like that. It's crazy how it gets something like that just jumped up in popularity. I tell you what, it's definitely keeping people more wary of recreational drugs. I mean, these are the ones that could be possibly contain that. It's definitely containing the usage, I guess, in a way. It's weird how something that bad can have an effect as well, and in terms of really just deterring people that are young from even getting involved in it anymore. I guess there's always going to be something, right? but some of the more the pills that are out there, people make themselves and they mix stuff in and people set out to have a good time and end up having, the worst time of their life. That shit ain't cool. And, that kind of stuff with fentanyl, things like that, just make people more apprehensive into even trying to do anything like that. Am I still going? Okay. Sorry. Something caught my attention real quick. All right. So you guys want to watch something else here? I'm happy to caught my attention real quick. I'm happy to spin up another one. Because we got we got time, totally. So like I said, the choices really are, and down this rabbit hole we're in, I have a cool one that kind of connects with last week. Yeah, this is a well done one. I like this guy. It's about the Finders, but it's kind of crazy. It's about this cult called the Finders. I don't know if Shizzy has covered this or not, but it's kind of wild because it kind of like circumferences like the satanic panic kind of thing, and which is a big theme in all this, and also like the CIA involvement with this group. They're kind of an interesting group. It's kind of wild. So it's just they don't make a lot of sense either. They something we can check out if you want. You guys want to watch that? Yeah, let's take a look. Why not? Let's see. There we go. Seems like a good time.
Completely different and unique, then Hunt a Killer is the product for you.
Your only chance to evacuate is to leave with us.
Cults. They live among us. They walk beside us. They're hidden in plain sight. We like to think that cults operate on a level underneath us, But sometimes it's quite the opposite. In 2019, the FBI Records Twitter account released a 600-page document about their investigation into the Finders cult. The tweet gained a massive amount of attention from online users and conspiracy theorists. Maybe you've heard about this mysterious group from around the internet. You may have even heard about some of the eerie practices this group was said to partake in. Curious myself, I decided to look into the documents, only to find that a lot of their wording was redacted or blacked out. And so it began. I became interested in learning more about this supposed satanic cult from the 80s. But through my research of newspaper articles, official investigation reports, and FBI documents, I honestly wasn't prepared for the mountains of information that waited for me. It really seemed like every other source had something new for me to read. So why isn't this talked about more? In this video, I will try to encompass my research in a straightforward timeline of events. This is the story of the Finders cult. It was the 1980s. Among the decade's trends of arcade games, horror movies, and big hair, a growing fear was sweeping the United States, known as the Satanic Panic.
To describe this story as horrifying would be an understatement.
The rise of heavy metal music with supposed hidden messages, Dungeons and Dragons, and news stories about satanic cults and rituals taking place fueled the growing hysteria.
The evidence is in. Satan worship and satanic cults are growing rapidly, and adherents of these ideas are becoming more vocal and more dangerous.
But in the end, that's all this was, right? Just hysteria.
You know, it's funny to think about this in a certain way, right? So as kids, right, I loved metal, right? It didn't turn me into a Satanist, but it definitely was heavily layered with stuff like that. But it was also a lot of anti-war stuff mixed in there too, and this outright independence and, you know, kind of things that you can pick up on a lot of different themes in the music, right? It wasn't all one thing, but there certainly was that there. And the thing about it is, if the parents were reacting to the way the kids were being, you know, as they were seeing it being influenced, right? It's kind of equal to what we're seeing today, right? And so from the point of view of the kids, you think about it, that it turned into kind of like, okay, well, I must be doing it right if the adults don't like it, right? Kind of attitude. And it's interesting parallel. Of course, you know, from the point of view of today, the stuff that's going on is really a night and day kind of in terms of damage, right? It's real damage. It's permanent damage. It's over the mark from, you know, just heavy metal music to and themes into actual practice. So I wouldn't quite compare the two, but I'm just saying from a perspective of the kids and so on, and from where we were, we can almost remember, like, you know, thinking it was kind of silly that people were telling us this is wrong, right?
On Wednesday, February 4th, 1987, an anonymous call was made to the Tallahassee Police Department. The call stated that two well-dressed men were seen watching over 6 dirty and unkept children, ages 2 to 7, at a playground in Myers Park, Tallahassee. According to an official report of investigation, the children were covered with insect bites and very dirty. Most of the children were not wearing underwear, and all the children had not been bathed in many days. Whereas the 2 men were found wearing suits and ties. Even more disturbing was their vehicle, a 1979 Dodge van. Inside the van were maps, books, letters, 20 floppy disks, a computer, and a mattress. The vehicle is also described as being foul-smelling. and it appeared as though all 8 of them had been living inside that van for quite some time. The 2 men explained to the police that they were the children's teachers, and that they were driving to a school for brilliant children in Mexico. Police asked the men where the children's mothers were, to which they said they were being weaned from their mothers. The men were arrested on multiple accounts of child abuse, and all 8 of them were taken into custody for further questioning. The men identified themselves as Michael Houlihan and Douglas Ammerman. When questioned, the 2 men were initially apprehensive to communicate. Some reports claim that one of them wouldn't cooperate at all and would enter a trance-like state. Authorities turned their efforts to questioning the 6 children, and this is where things started to get unsettling.
Just blame it on Jorge.
The children were identified as Mary Houlihan, Max Livingston, Benjamin Franklin, Honey B. Evans, BB, and John Paul Houlihan. Evidently, these were not the children's real names because they didn't have proper names. According to the police, 5 of the 6 children were uncommunicative and didn't seem to recognize common items or modern technology, such as typewriters, hot water, or electricity. The 6th and oldest child, Mary, showed signs of sexual abuse.
Check it out, definitely.
Mary fortunately was able to communicate and give information to investigators. Here's some of what she said. Mary confirmed that the 2 men were indeed their teachers. However, she wasn't sure where they recently were or where they were going. When asked what her last name was, she replied, "Which one?" She stated that they lived in Washington in a house with other children and adults. She and the other children mainly survived on a raw fruit and vegetable diets, but were visibly malnourished and only fed as a reward for good behavior. When asked what the 2 men taught them, she responded with, "How to play games." She said they would receive instructions from their leader, a man known as the game caller or game leader, later to be known as a man named Marion Petty. Based on what Mary said, the Tallahassee police decided to contact the DC police in an attempt to identify the 6 children, only to learn that they were already aware of this group, who called themselves the Finders. According to a 1987 article from the Washington Post, one of the first newspapers to publicize this event, records from the U.S. District Court in Washington showed that an anonymous, confidential source told authorities that the Finders were a cult that conducted brainwashing techniques at a Northeast Washington warehouse and an apartment building near Glover Park. This source told of being recruited by the Finders with promises of financial reward and sexual gratification, and of being invited by one member to explore Satanism with them. According to the affidavit, the source told authorities that the children were used in rituals by the members, and though the source had never witnessed abuse of the children, the source said the children's grandparents feared for their safety. And so, on the following Thursday and Friday, Washington police raided these 2 areas that were given to them by this confidential police source. Furthermore, evidence found within the seized vehicle pointed to a 90-acre Virginia farm owned by a man named George Marion Petty. Virginia State Police were contacted to visit and search the area as well. At the warehouse in Washington, police found that the windows were boarded shut, and the building was padlocked with a heart-shaped lock. Inside were newspapers and mattresses scattered across various rooms, as if someone had lived there. On one wall were shelves with obscure books, and on the other was a huge map of the entire world. Most disturbingly, DC police uncovered large plastic bags filled with wallet-sized photographs. According to the US Customs Service, some of these photos were of children, similar to school photos, naked children, children engaged in what appeared to be cult rituals involving the slaughtering of goats with 3 men wearing white robes, and one photo in particular that showed a child in chains. At the apartment building near Glover Park, neighbors were questioned and confirmed that 2 of the photographed children lived in that building. They also explained that only women and children lived there, but that they would occasionally see men visiting the house. One woman said that the children were often so dirty that they were easy to notice. At the Virginia farm, neighbors reported that they often saw vans containing children that were brought to the farm. According to the Tampa Tribune, one of the neighbors, a woman named Wilma Richards, said, "They'd be hollering and crying all the time, like they wanted something or something was hurting them." Wilma also explained that when she first met Marion Petty, he introduced himself as a Boy Scout leader. Although her and her husband were suspicious of the dozen or so men and children seen at their farm, they never phoned the authorities. On Friday, February 6th, Scott Hunt of the Tallahassee Police Department said,
What's up, Shizzy? How you doing, man? Hey, jump on, man. You guys are done with your stream? I'll send you an invite. Love to have you join us for this. We're just getting started. About 11 minutes in. Yeah, we finished up the other stuff earlier. So everybody wanted to keep going and pull this out. I'm glad you're here. All right. Say hello, Shizzy. Ah, here he is. Let's see. All right, we'll go with this one. I have to get you your theme song. I didn't have anything programmed in yet, but ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream, Shizzy Wiznut.
Welcome.
How's it going, brother?
How's it going? Man, I have never streamed that long on my own with saying meaningless shit.
Oh man.
Cheers. I'm just gonna pour another drink because fuck it. It's Wednesday. We're halfway there.
There you go.
Dude, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. And we're having a good show tonight. We did a whole old documentary on MKUltra mind control, kind of like, tracing it back to its roots, what it did, what its intention was, and some of the damage it caused, and some of the people it affected, and all those kind of things. So we covered all that earlier, and then we were like, hey, let's check out and see what else we have on board. I had some stuff from Canada that was like tied to that exact story, but it seemed like we covered a lot of the same material. I was like, well, I don't know if we want to go back over that. Let's find something else. And I had this in the bank.
So when did MKUltra start? What year?
Well, really, it started as back in the 60s, right? So I think I got that right. I feel like I'm not getting my dates right now. Let me see.
Possibility.
53.
I've done that before.
Right.
53. So that would have been like the end of the Korean War.
Right. And it was a result of this type of mind control they saw their soldiers being put under by the other Koreans, right? So they I guess the North Koreans. And so they thought that they had mastered mind control. So they set off on this endeavor to do the same. And their way of doing it was like by very physical means, like, by through drugs and through like shock therapies and very invasive procedures. And I guess it wasn't until later on they figured out that they could just do it without all the intrusiveness, just by controlling the information in the narrative and boxing people in with social pressure and trends and entertainment and all that stuff. All the ways they do it, keep people
Yeah.
in that first fail.
Let's see. You like my picture right there? That's a lobotomy.
Oh wow. Oh, jeez.
That's actually how they perform the lobotomy. So what they would do is they would drive that little spike up in through the eye socket into the brain, and then they would just scramble it.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah. But this was the kind
go.
of crap that they did to, basically if you had an idea that was outside of the norm, they would scramble your brain. And yeah, a population that is controlled is so relevant to people that want control.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
Absolutely.
Hey, T3, Suzanne. Oh man, everybody's just showing the love. Everybody's showing the love. I appreciate all you peoples. No, I actually went through and watched DeSantis on his introduction into the realm of politics. Like we didn't know it was going to happen for the past fucking week because he's been
Right.
talking about it. It's like, well, I'll formally introduce myself. And actually for the very first part of it is that typical, you can tell that he's reading off of that script. He's like hitting all the points that they're talking about. But once you watch it a little bit further, it's just like, hey, he's got some good ideas. Oh, how dreams are so easily shattered. How dreams are so easily shattered. I think that Trump figured that out a little bit too late. Was like, wow, it's so embedded and so deep that you just can't get out of that shit. Good luck on every single person that ever runs for a political office. I feel for you because it is no different than throwing your hat in the ring to basically bullfight. and then they give you like Nerf guns to bullfight with.
Right.
Listening to Grace Jones. Grace Jones was awesome. Grace Jones and David Bowie. Dude, that was shit right there.
Yeah, I used to cover David Bowie stuff.
David Bowie was the shit.
I had a lot of David Bowie covers. I like David Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just showing the graph. We were kind of the brain app we were looking at the other night that has all this information in it. 1953.
So impressive. So impressive.
You see here, yeah. So yeah, it was a 20-year program.
And MKUltra did all of this horrible shit. That was the.
It had a lot of residuals, yeah. Just but the whole idea is that the whole thing was done on the public and just with no care, right? It was just done on unwitting people who didn't understand what they were getting into. They were duped into it. Sometimes it was just people who didn't agree to it at all. And that type of power, that type of control over everybody has to be alarming. It has to raise flags and get you kind of like aware that this isn't like La La Land, like they want you to believe.
Well, and do you think that it's still going on?
There you go. Well, yeah. See here, you go. Someone who didn't really think it existed before. Steel Stargazer. Right. I understand because the terminology gets thrown around. It almost starts to sound conspiratorial, right?
Yes.
But it actually was a real thing, and it gets mixed in because you hear the conspiratorial people always using the terminology, right? And the reason why I wanted to revisit it was to get people rooted in the facts about how it started and what it was about, so they could kind of see the differential. And to answer your question, Shiz, I don't think it's going on the day like this at all. I think that they've sophisticated it in such a way that as far as any kind of type of control over humans or to having them flip a switch, they're not going to have to ever do that public again, right? They don't have to
No.
ever do that kind of thing on a massive scale. They can model for mass, for whatever. They have a good grasp on it by now. I mean, hey,
I mean,
someone like me
how
can get a
hard
grasp on it.
hard was it to get an entire country? And we're not just talking about like a small portion, an entire country to put a mask on their face. I mean, how hard was it? I think that's something that people don't consider, that they're you can still walk into a grocery store and people are still wearing masks on their face. You can go into a restaurant and your host puts a mask on over their face.
I came back with a bunch of these twisted teas from from the weekend, and so I'm gonna have one with you. It's not straight bourbon, but
I am drinking straight bourbon. I am drinking this wonderful, wonderful Redemption. It is a Redemption wheated bourbon. It is so spicy, so tasty.
So,
oh yeah,
go ahead.
Susan. Yes, I agree. Rest in peace, Tina Turner. 76 years old. Is that what I saw? She was 76.
I thought I heard she was 83.
I don't know. She still had great legs whenever she was doing, and she was like well into her like 60s at the point that she was doing 83. Damn. She had great legs though.
Mm-hmm. Rest in peace, Tina.
Yeah.
We'll always remember Thunderdome. We'll always have Thunderdome.
Yeah, Thunderdome was awesome. What did she call Mel Gibson? The Raggedy Man. Come on, Raggedy Man.
Raggedy Man. Yeah. That's a Raggedy Man. Who runs Bottom Town?
That she went through. God
Master
damn.
Blaster runs Bottom Town. Who runs Bottom Town?
Oh, Tina.
Master Blaster runs Bottom Town. You gotcha.
God, Tina Turner. God.
Yep.
The shit
we don't
that
need
she
another
went
hero.
through.
I know.
And just the voice. Just the voice on that lady was so impressive. I mean, she and she also had this outlook which is so impressive from a musician standpoint that everyone expected, because she's this black woman, to be doing soul or something like that, but she would take stuff like Creedence Clearwater and cover it because she was like, no, it's a really good fucking song. I really like this song, and I'm going to do, Proud Mary and things like that because it wasn't about, oh, well, that's not proper for being a black musician. It was like, no, this is just a really good song.
Well, let me get this question, and we're going to jump back into this documentary before everybody forgets what we've seen.
Sorry, I'll take it off the rails. I'm sorry.
No, man, you're all good, man. I'm happy that you're here. So the question is, do you think it's being done through the internet? I think it's self-replicating at this point. I mean, in terms of it, right? I just think ideas flow, and people just have gotten into this way of being confined into them and then becoming advocates for them. And I don't, mind control through the internet is done through having a captive audience, and then being able to activate them to action through emotional triggers. So like you have this rage building, right? You start archetyping. That is when we replace one profile of someone with an archetype of someone else who we want them to be associated with. So like how they did with Trump, right? They put him next to Hitler, and they put them, and they would use the terminology, right? And they would use it instead, with everything that they were doing. It was all
Yes.
about shading out that profile and using those archetypes to make that association. So every time you hear those words that trigger the archetype, right? So you get the flash, the image, and then you hear his name right after it. So you're boom, boom, you're associating them. And that really is the essence of how to completely smear somebody, right? How to completely destroy somebody in the public eye. And we see it done all the time. So now that you realize, if you haven't heard the technique before, think about it when you see it again, because it's getting ready to come like full blown again. It's
Oh
getting ready
yeah,
to get
2024 is going to be
baby.
insane.
Yeah.
2020, and it's not just one side that's doing it. And these people that think it's only coming from the left or the right. No, it's coming from both sides. Both sides are using this kind of mind control, where they use words that are supposed to be triggering, but if your mind is clear and you focus in on what they're actually saying and take it, if you take away like your internal bias of one way or the other, you'll notice the bullshit. You'll go, oh, no, I'm not buying that crap that you're saying, because something just doesn't sound right. And I will tell you that Shelley, talking trash and truths, she will hear stuff that she goes, that just doesn't sound fucking right to me. She'll see it, she'll hear it, she'll go, that doesn't sound right. I'm like really suspicious almost immediately of what the fuck you're saying, because I've heard this shit before and it's not true. And because I think she opens herself up to that, where she says, nope, I've heard this before. It's like an abused woman, one that's been like slapped around. Whenever she says, oh, I'm sorry, babe, I won't do it again, she hears that and it sets off a trigger. She's like, no, motherfucker's gonna do this shit again. I need to get the fuck away from him. So it's one of those. I think that it once you hear it, you notice it, and you spot it, and it makes you much more stronger, much more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. So it's all about, you have to be able to understand what it is in order to face it, right?
Yes.
Here we go. Okay, so this is chapter 2, the hunt, right? So
Hunt.
Where we're at right now is basically these guys got caught in a park with these kids, right? They didn't belong to them. Then the story was they're being weaned from their mothers. It's this finders cult. Do you know much about these guys?
I have never heard of it, but I'm
Did you
like,
get-
that's
how much
why I
did you
was
get to
like
watch?
so interested. I was like, this is interesting. I love it.
How much did you get to watch? Where did you kind of pick up at?
I picked up right there where you're at.
Right
Yep.
in this area? Okay,
Yeah.
you feel good about starting here?
Yeah, you can start right
All right.
where there.
Let's go.
It is our belief these kids were not kidnapped, but that their parents gave them away, because one of the rites of passage into this satanic organization is that you have to give up your rights to your children, and that the leaders of this organization can do what they want with your children. It was around this time that a series of telephone death threats were being made towards the 6 children. The calls were described as brief and untraceable. This is strange because the children were transferred to a private foster home, and the police were careful to keep their location a secret. The Palm Beach Post reported that the authorities do not know where the calls originated from or how they located the children. To tell you the truth, we didn't anticipate any death threats against 6 obviously very forlorn children who are in a very sad state. The fact that we have received...
So this is before Star 69. If anybody
Yes.
had touch-tone phones, you know about Star 69, because if someone made a prank phone call to you, and this was something that the phone company implemented, and it would have probably been like in the 90s, where you could hit star 69. Yes.
Yeah.
And you could find out, it would tell you where they called from. You could actually call that number right back.
Right.
So,
That was awesome.
so yeah,
that
sorry,
would
I had to interrupt. That's just funny that it's just like, we don't know where these came from. But yeah, that was when at the rotary phone still 87.
Right. I was also thinking, was Star 88 like call forwarding? You know, there's call forwarding and there's three-way calling. You could do all three.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was an extra service that you had to pay for, but it was so minimal.
Right? It made sense to get it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Death threats has put us on alert, and these children are going to be guarded around the clock. By the weekend, the story of the finders made national headlines as one of the creepiest mysteries of the 80s. Were the finders involved in satanic rituals with children? Were they instead part of a massive human trafficking ring? Where are the children's parents? And what games were the finders playing?
Every week, man. Every week. Every Wednesday.
And I do
amidst
on
all
Mondays.
The chaos and mystery, the Tallahassee police managed to get in contact with a man identifying himself as Robert Terrell. Terrell and several other members of the finders believed this all to be a giant misunderstanding, that once the police suggested the possibility of a satanic cult, the media blindly accepted it. Their story was published on the Tampa Tribune on Monday, February 9th. Terrell sent the police a 2-page memo detailing the finders' activities in order to clear up any misunderstandings. In the memo, the 2 men and 6 children were originally on their way to Berea, Kentucky, where the group was to help establish a retirement community and where the children would be placed in school. However, this trip was delayed, so the group instead went vacationing in Florida with the approval of the children's mothers. Even the founder and financial developer for this retirement home, Reverend Jim Weicker and Carl Shapley respectively, chimed in to explain that the finders were gentle people, searching for new dimensions and lifestyles. As for the photographs found of naked children and goats being slaughtered, Terrell explained that there were simple, innocent explanations for each. First, he explained that Michael Houlihan was a stepfather to one of the children and the biological father to another. The photo of naked children was there because, well, that's what parents tend to have. The goats, on the other hand, were already slaughtered and brought to the group's farm. The men wore white robes to simply protect their clothing and thought that the children should be taught the experience. Terrell explained that the parents of all 6 children were members themselves of the finders. However, he also notes that many of the adult members of this group were hiding around the country, fearing arrest. There were several reports of sightings of members in Gainesville, Miami, and Tampa. Police also reported that the mothers of the 6 children were in San Francisco. As for
I mean, shit, this all makes perfectly good sense, right?
Yes.
He just explained. It's just like, yeah, okay. I don't know. I have zero pictures of my kid naked, dude. It's like, what did they have him laying around the house on the wall? It's like, someone had brought the slaughtered goats there.
And I will say from experience that I'm sure there were pictures of me naked as a kid, because it wasn't pornography whenever we were kids. It was, our because we all wear white to protect us from blood. Jesus.
Right?
Kids need to witness the slaughter. No, I mean, and here's the thing. Me as a kid, I mean, it was not uncommon, and it's not uncommon for children that they don't have that filter. They don't see it as dirty or pornography or anything like that. My nieces, nephews, whatever, it's not uncommon for them to come running out of the bedroom, butt ass naked, just streaking through the house and run outside. It is not uncommon. You don't find it offensive or anything because they're kids. And it's not a sexual thing unless you're just like into that kind of sexual thing. Then yeah, sure, I guess it is. but you're just laughing because, this kid is completely unbridled and they do not give two shits what you think. They're not putting that diaper on. They just don't care. It's freedom. It's so weird that, that as a kid I guarantee you there's tons of pictures of me running around naked, but it wasn't pornographic in nature, but some of these people were
But I mean,
taking
just hanging on the wall in the living room. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
This
no.
is usually put away somewhere.
something like
I don't
that. Yeah,
know.
that's starting to get just like, oh, that's a little
That's
creepy.
a little weird.
Why do you have a big, that's a little
Yeah.
creepy. Yeah.
It's a little creepy.
Yeah.
But the whole story makes perfect sense. That's what we're trying to say.
Yes, sorry.
For their leader, former members explained that Marion Petty was a retired Air Force Master Sergeant who, in the late 1960s, started the Finders Group. He sought after those who were intelligent and into the counterculture scene. He would lecture them about the New Age way of living and Eastern mysticism. Marion and his followers decided to start a new generation of children that would be raised by them instead of their parents. In reality, they were largely ignored by the members. However, they claimed to not know anything about supposed child abuse or Satanism taking place within the group. And just like that, the Finders were seemingly cleared of suspicion. The media and several newspapers reported on the misconception, saying that, although the Finders were strange, there was no evidence of illegal activity. Both Houlihan and Ammerman were freed from jail. The charges were dropped, and the case was closed. The whole event vanished from headlines as quickly as they appeared, and the Finders were attributed to nothing more than another instance of satanic panic hysteria.
Well, do you think that
As you may have suspected, the official story given by Terrell and newspapers did not match up, or at sometimes conflict, with the details given by official reports. For example, Terrell claimed that the men and children were en route to Kentucky, despite Houlihan and Ammerman themselves saying they were going to Mexico. Furthermore, several women from the Finders cult, who claimed to be the mothers of the children, stated that their kids were well taken care of. They attributed their unkept and dirty appearance to them just being kids, despite the reports of malnutrition and sexual abuse. Let's take a closer look at some of these official documents to see what else was suspiciously left out or ignored. On April 13th, 1987, an official U.S. Customs report by Special Agent Ramon J. Martinez was filed. The report mostly follows the same story published by the media. An anonymous call is made about 2 well-dressed and 6 dirty and unkept children in Myers Park, Tallahassee. The 2 men are arrested, and the 6 children are brought in for questioning. Authorities are eventually led to several properties and buildings that are believed to be owned by the Finders. At this point, the stories begin to diverge slightly. Agent Martinez comes into contact with Detective Jim Bradley, who had already been investigating the Finders since 1985. The 2 inspected the apartment building first, where they found large amounts of clothing for toddlers, such as diapers, and toys. They also uncovered documents with detailed instructions on how to obtain children, including trading, kidnapping, purchasing, and the impregnation of Finders members. Within a computer were telex messages from across the country and foreign locations about the purchasing of children. One message in particular specifically ordered the purchase of 2 children in Hong Kong to be arranged in the Chinese embassy. Other findings include an interest in bank secrecy situations, interest in high-tech transfers to the United Kingdom, numerous properties said to belong to the Finders, an interest in terrorism and explosives, and how to avoid law enforcement. What's strange is that they also found a detailed summary of Houlihan's and Ammerman's arrest in Tallahassee. This is unusual because Houlihan and Ammerman were taken into custody the night before Martinez's and Bradley's investigation, and well before the Washington Post broke the story. So somehow the finders were already aware of their arrest, even before mainstream media. They were also given instructions on how to avoid police capture via a computer network. Agent
Just a reminder, if you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button. And we are on Rumble and on YouTube.
Martinez and Detective Bradley.
Do you want to add
And
something?
make sure that you show the love over there, because Rumble for whatever reason, I had randomly people jumping in and out on my stream, and I never saw a single chat that came through over there. So if anybody was chatting over on Rumble, I never saw a single one. I just finished up over there. I was like, well, I'm still going to do my thing. Don't care.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here, Tam. It's so great to see you.
Up to the Finders Cult. Thanks for bringing up these vids. Yeah, absolutely, Tam. Because there's a big tie with cults and what you see back from in the 50s, 30s, 20s, the aughts, before before we were ever even born. Some of these cults have been around since before Christ. So it's impressive that how deep the psychological warfare gets put in there, and it's amazing that how quickly people can get sucked into these things. And it has to do with a deep feeling of wanting to belong. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to belong, but if part of your belonging means that you have to give up a part of yourself, or a part of your soul, a part of your core beliefs, then question it seriously, because it can be devastating in the long run. And some of these groups, some of these cults, not only will indoctrinate you, but they will have you indoctrinate your children and your children's children, to the point where it can be devastating to a whole humanity. I mean, a whole group of people that were unsuspecting of it. So yes, be very vigilant.
Very good advice.
Reconnected the next day, Friday, February 6th, to investigate the warehouse on 4th Street. The warehouse contained a large library, 2 kitchens, a sauna, a hot tub, and a video room. Inside the video room was something described as an indoctrination center. Martinez goes on to report that the finders seemed capable of producing its own videos, and that jars of urine and feces were also found. At this location were documents describing explicit sexual conduct between members of the finders. A large collection of photographs were also uncovered.
Have a good night, Suzanne.
Have a good
Take
night,
care.
Suzanne.
Thank you for all you do. Rest well.
Containing images of nude children on display, adults and children in white sheets participating in a blood ritual, and goats being dismembered, disemboweled, and skinned by the children.
White goats!
Files
Leave the
revealing
goats
the activities of the
alone.
finders in other parts of the world were found, including London, Germany, the Bahamas, Costa Rica, Japan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Africa, and Europe. Other files describe the finders' projects, such as one plan titled Pentagon Break-In. If that wasn't disturbing enough, there also seemed to be a large amount of information on families and child daycare organizations. According to this report, the finders would respond to various newspaper advertisements for babysitters, tutors, etc. A member would use this opportunity to learn about the habits, identity, occupation, and so on about the family. For what purposes were unknown to the investigators. Agent Martinez concludes his report with the hope that all the information would be sorted, reviewed, and logged by the Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department, or the MPD. If his findings were to be true, this would be a strong case against the finders for child abuse and international human trafficking. However, none of that would happen. On April 2nd, 1987, Agent Martinez was to meet with Detective Bradley to review their findings. However, Bradley was unavailable. A third party, who was willing to speak to Martinez on an off-the-record basis, told him that the investigation into the finders had become a CIA internal matter and was classified as secret. The FBI also withdrew from the investigation, and from that point forward, no further information will be available. No further action will be taken. That's the story according to the US Customs report. However, in 2017, the Tallahassee police documents were acquired and uploaded online, and these documents would reveal much more information that was hidden from the public for 3 decades.
Jesus.
First, an investigation into the finders' vehicle further reveals a few radios, boxes containing clothing, fruits, vegetables, a Chinese English dictionary, a pack of Trojan condoms, a brown canvas bag containing photos of children, some nude,
What?
computer
Wait, hold
programming
on.
discs.
Hold on.
Yo.
So they pull these guys over. They find a bag of photos of children, some nude, and they just let them ride on.
I mean,
I'm just saying, you know, if I was a police officer and someone and I'm doing some sort of search on it and I find like photos of nude children in there, there's going to be some questions asked. Like,
yeah,
like they're not leaving my state without some serious questions asked. I mean, that, you know, a few radios, okay, whatever. A box containing clothing, fruits, and vegetables, no big deal. A Chinese English dictionary, weird, but okay. A pack of Trojan condoms, whatever. That it's what the fucking whatever.
Whatever you guys want to do.
It's
right?
condoms.
It's like,
you guys are doing your thing. But then whenever you get to a bag containing photos of children, some nude,
yeah, it's a red flag.
Then the red flags go up.
Yeah.
Computer programming just don't care about that. It's the bag of fucking photos with new children.
It's only one bad thing out of 6. I mean,
oh yeah, the rest of it seems completely normal, but you start putting into context, it's just like, oh, this is really fucking weird. Maybe we want to do like a little smackdown on these guys, and you know, this is where waterboarding comes in really handy. Just
yeah. Where's the MKUltra mind control goes? I guess it's like, it won't hold up in court.
Yeah.
A piece of paper titled The Ballad of Ballads, which made references to houses in Miami, Hawaii, San Diego, and China, and many...
That's an odd name. The Ballad of Ballads. Someone was really inspired when they came up with that one.
Many other items. Second, there was an odd occurrence at Florida State University. According to this report, a student by the name of Robert Sorkine came across a small computer at a public phone booth on campus. During an interview, Robert explained that he was walking past the phone booth when he noticed the computer and took it home with him. During the weekend, he managed to start up the computer and attempted to figure out its owner. Robert discovered information concerning the Tallahassee Police Department and decided to turn the computer over to them. The TPD were able to determine that this computer was owned by somebody involved with the finders. Next, 2 of the 6 children, Mary and Max, would describe some of the games the finders would play. One involved taking off the men's clothes, putting them on, and then looking through the pockets. Max elaborated that they would only remove the men's jackets. Another game was taking a shirt with holes, running away with it, and then tearing it up.
Shizzy, maybe.
Both Mary and Max also noted that women would come downstairs with no clothes. During the interview, some of the other children urinated their pants, and one wanted to go outside to go to the bathroom. After a medical examination from the Tallahassee Department of Health and Rehabilitation Services, this report claimed that 2 children, Mary and Max, were confirmed cases of sexual abuse. Max lacked anal spectre control, consistent with sodomy, and Mary showed signs of penetration by fingers. But penile penetration wasn't completely ruled out. John Paul had bite marks on his arm, but doctors couldn't determine if they were from an adult or child due to the marks being 5 days to 2 weeks old.
Jeez.
As you can hopefully tell, these are very serious claims made by both detectives and medical experts. Yet, for whatever reason, these reports seem to be ignored. How is it that the media reported on finding no evidence of satanic cults or illegal activity, yet a mountain of evidence from the Tallahassee Police Department, the HRS, and Ramon Martinez conflicts with that? Why did the finders' men carry condoms with them? Why were they given a cover story to use if they were caught by the police? Why were there so many connections to China? The Chinese English dictionary, the files specifying ordering children from Hong Kong, the fact that Mary learned how to count to 10 in Chinese. It would take several years for the Department of Justice to get involved, but eventually they did.
Ooh. It's all about China. China, I tell you.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy how that all connects, isn't it?
Dude, I'm just like going, what? Like, you got some poor little child that can't even poop right because he's been like sodomized. You got a girl that they're just like suspecting that, someone's penetrated her with their fingers, but they can't rule out like penal. It's just like, and they're still letting these fuckwads go.
Well, we're only halfway through, so there might be a twist here coming up. I don't know, but I don't remember. I think I watched this thing all the way through. I'm pretty sure I did.
It's so
there might be a little twist coming, but the yeah. Well, I think the whole lack of coverage too, right? So they will cover all kinds of things. They're not covering this, right? No, I hear you, Steele. I hear you. Yeah, thank you guys for bearing with it.
Yes.
I know it's
It is.
I know
it is rough, but
it's a rough stuff, and I know we lost a few people during that segment, but thanks for hanging with us. We're all here to kind of like learn this together, and unfortunately, looking away doesn't make it go away. So you're tough and you're brave for being here, and thank you. And we will keep trudging forward.
Yes.
By the 1990s, Martinez's reports on the finders remained kept away, and the hysteria surrounding the satanic panic had subsided. In December 18th,
Hey, Shiz, real quick, just to kind of like, real quick. You covered some of the satanic panic on your channel, didn't you?
Yes.
What was your overall thoughts on that? I had spoken earlier, kind of like about perspective, I guess, in a sense that, having grown up, loving heavy metal music and and not, becoming a full-blown Satanist and
Well, heavy metal
being a
music
regular
was,
to Illuminati
what,
blood rituals
Black
and stuff.
Sabbath. Whenever I was growing up, that was heavy metal music, and I mean, most of it was, just drug-induced like debauchery. No
Yeah, it was
different than
just
that
shock
was.
value, right?
Yeah, it
was
was.
It was like shock value. I mean,
And
then
then
you get into
whenever
some bands
people
that
actually realized that Halford was, gay, and the reason that he was dressing as leather is because that was sort of his kink, they were just like, oh,
for like Judas Priest.
yeah.
Right.
They're just like, oh,
I mean,
yeah,
no one
he's
questioned
not,
Motley Crue
he's
for
not,
wearing makeup and having their hairspray and stuff. Like
yeah.
all of a sudden, it was just the cool, and you're like, I remember the first time I ever saw a Motley Crue cassette tape. Right? I remember the first time I ever saw one,
Yes.
and I heard about these guys, and I looked at it, and I'm like, I know there was a part of me that was like, what the hell's going on? But at the same time, I was like, okay, this is cool, all right. But and it was, but I was just like, I remember that moment going, oh. Like and there was something that went off my mind, and I didn't quite know what. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I'm pretty sure it was the fact that they looked so weird and they were done up with makeup and hairspray, which
Who was it? CC DeVille that was with Poison.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I ran into CC out in Los Angeles, and CC is got like horrible like scars from acne and stuff. He is not an attractive looking guy, and one of the things that he said, one of the best parts of that particular era, that it allowed him to put makeup on and cover up all of that kind of like flaw that he saw and be attractive. He was just like, he was so redneck. I loved it. He was actually a pretty cool guy. I didn't like their music, but he was actually pretty cool. It was just like, yeah, the whole Poison thing is probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I could put makeup on and look attractive. It's like,
there you go. Nobody
like,
questioned it. They're like, okay, cool. Shout the devil. Let's go.
Yeah.
1993, news broke out that the Department of Justice began looking into the finders, this time under the aura of conspiracy. According to a private detective named Skip Clements, he claimed that the U.S. Customs Service investigators were called off of the investigation by the CIA. The investigation was impeded, said Clements. A senior official at Customs said the finders, was a CIA operation. Clements' accusations reached at least 2 members of Congress, who were reportedly unsure what to believe in. Regardless, the Department of Justice began conducting an investigation into whether or not the CIA were involved with the finders. However, a CIA spokesperson named David Christian claimed this to be a misunderstanding on Martinez's behalf. When Agent Martinez was told that the investigation into the finders had become a CIA internal matter, this was actually because one of the members of the finders was employed as a part-time accountant at a computer training school called Future Enterprises, Inc. This location was also where employees from the CIA received computer training in the 1980s, prompting an internal investigation. Vice President of Future Enterprises at the time, Joseph Marinich, confirmed that his company did train CIA operatives, but denied any allegations that the CIA used it as a front company for the finders. However, according to the Washington Times, a 1987 police document quotes a CIA agent confirming his agency was sending its people to a Finders Corporation, Future Enterprises, for training in computer operations.
All right, pause.
It also notes that a later customs report said that.
Okay, so here's the thing, and as much as you want to talk about the CIA and all that kind of stuff, you think about this being what, 1980s. So,
yep,
most people. So 1987, most people didn't own a computer. This is absolutely new technology to them. This is before Apple became Apple. This is whenever it might have even been Macintosh. We had Tandy computers. Microsoft Windows did not exist. And so it would not be uncommon for people to, in any sort of government agency to be learning computer programming. Just and most of the computers that you're running are just Word documents. Basic Word, like data information. You type it in, you could go back, you could backspace, you could type in the information that you wanted. So I just sort of have to call a little bit of BS on this. Is like, yeah, maybe they were doing some searches on people, but that would have been like internal memos, like an email. Yeah, Word perfect. I mean, it would have been basically nothing. Computer knowledge at that point in time was so low. So for training an FBI, CIA, hell, we were just learning how to build Choplifter in junior high. So
yeah, I remember that. That was a great game, by the way.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
you get the guys off the roof. They had to catch them.
Yep.
The people that were falling on the ground. Yeah, I used to play that a lot. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The CIA admitted to owning the Finders organization as a front for domestic computer training operations, but that it had gone bad. Make that as you will. In an article by U.S. News, Florida's House of Representative member Tom Lewis states, "Could our own government have something to do with this Finders organization and turn their backs on these children? That's what all the evidence points to, and there's a lot of evidence. I can tell you this, we've got a lot of people scrambling, and that wouldn't be happening if there was nothing here." However, the Finders still uphold their innocence. In an interview between US News and Marion Petty himself, Petty describes the Finders as a company that does freelance journalism, research, and competitor intelligence. He also denies any claims that they work for foreign companies. Petty claims that the reason why the CIA is interested in him and the Finders is because his late wife once worked for the CIA. His son also worked for a CIA proprietary firm, Air America. Although the Tallahassee police reports does mention something interesting. When word first broke out about the Finders, Lieutenant Lee Hart of the Virginia Police Department got in contact with somebody from the cult. This contact told Hart that Petty had alerted members to flee and hide. He further elaborated that Petty would have probably gone to the Andrews Air Force Base and take a military plane to China. The outcome of the Justice Department's investigation is never made clear in the documents that I was able to uncover. However, I think it's pretty safe to say that the investigation was either concluded or secretly dropped with no actions being placed against the Finders or the CIA. Many of the sources I found claim that the Finders had fewer and fewer members as the years went on, with some stating that less than a dozen were remaining. The Finders were never heard from again after this investigation, and Marion Petty passed away in 2004.
Pause. Pause. Pause.
Pause. Gotcha. Sorry, buddy.
So think about this. In another 20 years, just 20 years from now, what do you think the outcome is going to be of the Steele dossier?
0.
And do you think they'll try to brush it under the covers? Oh, it was a nothing burger. It was nothing. We don't know anything.
Of course,
about
yeah. I mean, the people involved probably won't even be around.
No, and that's sort of where I view some of this stuff, where it's just like, well, yeah. I mean, there was some shady shit. Oh, yeah, we don't want to talk about that. It's best if we just don't speak of this anymore.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that they would brush this kind of stuff under the covers, because it didn't turn out like they wanted it to.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of went off the rails, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it was supposed to what was their excuse? A computer learning opportunity or something? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, there's
you know,
well, I
just
guess that didn't quite pan out like it was supposed to.
I
Let's
mean,
not just we only want to talk about the good things that we've done. I mean, think about this.
Hey, Mark, you're
Hey,
awesome,
Mark,
dude. Thanks for
good
being
to
here.
see you, man.
Awesome, man. I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, imagine that you're this wonderful content creator, you know, that does all of this wonderful content, and then you get your ass busted because of some program that you talk about that you want to create, and yeah, well, it doesn't quite work out the way that you want to, and then you get caught up in like some sort of like weird conspiracy, and next thing you know, not even 10 years later, you're working for the Daily Wire.
You know, people might not realize this, but 5 out of 10 projects that start out as computer learning or computer investigations turn into pedophile rings. It's like, what they just, what are you gonna do? It's nature of the beast and all.
It brings me back to a buddy of mine that he was, because we both worked backline, and he goes over to a buddy of his place, and not really a buddy, just like a musician, and they're all hanging out, and some dude like pulls this up. Oh, did you check this out? And he comes over and he looks at it, and he was just like, dude, that's like fucking child porn. I have like a 3-year-old daughter. Like, I am gonna smash your shit in about 30 seconds unless you delete this crap, because this is fucking horrendous, horrible, disgusting. And they never even considered that this was improper. And he was just like, what the fuck are you guys? And he literally disassociated with them within like 30 seconds of seeing this shit. It was like, if this is the kind of crap that you're into, I want to have no part of you or your shit or whatever. And
right,
he was out the fucking door, just like, you're lucky I don't beat the shit out of every single fucking one of you. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and you guys are looking at pictures of children. It's like
enjoying it. that's just,
it wasn't
ridiculous.
that they were enjoying it, they were just making fun of it. I mean, they didn't see anything improper. And it's just like, yeah, and that's how we have to be as a human race. Is like,
right?
It's like, you see something really fucked up, you either separate or you stop the shit that's happening, because that's just not appropriate.
Yeah, it really is down to that. People have to understand what they're doing is not right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we're all good, man. That's a good point.
So here we are, several years later. Now we get to the fun part. In 2019, the FBI Records Twitter account released a 600-page document about their investigation into the Finders cult.
Damn.
Knowing everything we know now, what was told by mainstream media, what was reported by Agent Martinez, and about the cult members and Marion Petty, let's dive in. Now, we won't be going through all 600 pages, as a large majority of it is still redacted, but I do want to point out some interesting bits of information in these documents regarding the Finders. The Department of Justice, the DOJ, has requested the FBI conduct a preliminary inquiry into allegations made by, I'm assuming, Skip Clements, concerning child sexual abuse by a group known as the Finders, and what role, if any, was played by the United States intelligence community. On February 4th, 1987, Michael Houlihan and Douglas Ammerman were arrested by the Tallahassee Police Department, the TPD, on misdemeanor child abuse charges resulting from a complaint that 6 children playing in a park were unkept and neglected. Houlihan and Emmerman, the 2 subjects with the children, could not initially provide sufficient information as to their legal custody of the children and were uncooperative regarding their identity and the children's identity. As a result of information developed during these arrests, the TPD contacted the Metropolitan Police Department and provided information concerning, I think, the CIA and their association with a group known as the Finders, based in Washington, D.C. On February 5th, 1987, the MPD executed search warrants prepared by the United States Attorney's Office, District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., on 2 properties owned by the Finders. Special Agent Ramon Martinez participated in these searches. Department of Justice's review of the United States' Customs Service documents indicates that during the execution of the search warrants by the MPD at the 2 Finders properties, the warehouse and the apartment, United States Customs Service secret agent Martinez claims to have observed a substantial amount of computer equipment and documents purportedly containing instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes. The instructions allegedly included the impregnation of female members of the community, purchasing children, trading children, and kidnapping them. Martinez claims, and a whole bunch of redacted.
Wow.
Martinez has alleged that the Finders are involved in a well-organized child abuse scheme, and that redacted, probably the CIA, I think, in conjunction with the State Department and the FBI's Foreign Counterintelligence Section, conspired to cover up those abuses. Quick edit, this is definitely the CIA because a later FBI document has the same text, but without the CIA being redacted, so yeah. This page, real quickly, is kind of weird. Well, it's not really weird. I have difficulty reading this section handled in
pause
and pen something of CIA employees. I had a tough time reading this.
So it says February 1987 was acting chief special something activities division office sergeant something handled impersonator of CIA employees McLean's and so that would be confidential informant work, internal investigations, allegations of CIA employee involvement, etc. Had regular interface with FBI, USDA, DA, requests for it looks like someone's name was repealed to his I can't tell that, not used for Metropolitan Police Department to call, used for 8288. This call in is of one from MPD, Metropolitan Police Department. So it looks like they were using special investigators, and there was a CI that was talking about the involvement in it. I don't know why he couldn't read that. Sorry. I have bad handwriting too. Steelcaser. I always forget that younger generation can't read cursive. Yes. Wanting to belong is what happened to our children now, with many wanting to be part of the queer club. Well, and you have to understand, young is really easy to get involved in any sort of political or sociological stuff because they want to belong. And this is one of the reasons why it's so easy to get people to join a cult of any sort, because if you've got a young impressionable mind, it's because they haven't developed life experience. But if you can take someone that's young and make them feel like they're an adult, they tend to follow really close, and they will become very submissive and subordinate to those that they view as being older, more intelligent. And we've all fallen into this. I mean, think about this. If you're a child and you look at your father and you see your father doing certain things, he's hardworking, he's out there working, 9 to 5, he's bringing home food for you, but he still, spends, you know, 10-15 minutes playing with you before bedtime. He plays catch with you on the weekends. He takes you to the park. That you're very impressed with that kind of interaction, and he's showing you kindness, love, and sincerity, and he's true to what he is. And imagine that father being the kind of person that, does not have your best interest and does horrible things to you. You're still impressed by that. So that's where it's very easy for, a really bad actor to slide in there. And this is one of the things that people have been speaking out against with all of the critical race theory, where, they're sending their kids off to a school that's supposed to be having their best interest, that's supposed to be teaching them reading, writing, arithmetic, because they're out there busting their ass. You've got two parents that are working their ass off just to basically pay off the bills that kids had, and they're sending them off because they trust the people they're sending them off to. And these people slide in there and they're cruel, and the kids don't know any different because they're so well impressed with it. It just it breaks your heart.
And then, hey, that's why we have to take our parental rights very, very seriously. And that's why we have to recognize that all the bad stuff happens when unsupervised access is given.
Yes.
Right. And we should never be giving unsupervised access for that amount of duration during those developmental years ever. Like when they can't handle what's going on, right? Or they can't discern what the information they're getting is, and right from wrong, and just the people that can wear a mask and trick them into believing what they want them to believe. That they should be under a camera and microphone at all times in this day and age, because they've obviously understood this is a loophole they can get into, and it's the perfect time to strike. And if they haven't been directed there, then the idea itself has put them there. So we take away their incentive to be there, and they will go away. Just easy as that.
Yeah, they'll go away, and they'll try to find other easy targets.
Well, yeah, they won't have the biggest, easiest one out there, which is school.
Yes.
They have to be.
Yeah, it is constant vigilance. And I mean that, dude, I'm not a parent, and I know that you are, and it's one of those where if I was a parent, oh my God, I would probably be like one of the worst parents to deal with, because I would be up in everybody's shit about every little thing.
Oh, no, man, bulldogs welcome, Absolutely. Get out there and bark, bud. Definitely. And people should, because it's their parental rights, man. And that's what they're exploiting. And then they're we're consenting, we're handing it over to these people who don't, in most cases, don't even have kids.
Yes.
And then we just trust that they're going to do the right thing, having no real experience with kids firsthand. Right. The idea, though, is that we put an eye in the sky at schools, right? And we as parents manage it. We don't just give it over to the state, be like, okay, here you go, government, you guys go ahead and screw this up for us. No, we take the initiative, and we start actually forming new, outside of government influence types of parent organizations that don't get political, but they get things done, right? So, and that's keeping it local within your own school district, and really just saying, we're going to be in charge of our school's surveillance, and we're going to keep a close eye on things, and that way they can handle the the situations as needed. And when they happen, they can be responded to in real time. Right now, just there's just too much darkness going on, like too much out of sight influence going on. And you know what? People that are out there have proven that they can't be trusted with it.
Both you and I came from the generation. I'm sure a few of the people in the chat came from the same generation of, you know, you went to school and there was still the concern of a principal or teacher that they would call the parents whenever the kid was acting up. And we as kids, we understood, you know, you do something really crappy in school that you had you had the chance that you were going to get your ass suspended. You're going to go home and then you were probably going to get your ass beat by your parents, and everybody in school knew it. And it wasn't just the embarrassment of embarrassing your family or your parents. It was that, yeah, you just got your ass beat by your dad because you were being a little shit. and that's gone away, because now it's just like, oh, we'll just report your parents for child abuse. And it wasn't abuse, it was the parents taking control of their kids and saying, yeah, we're not going to allow this kind of crap to happen in our household.
Very few people grow up and tell the story that, oh, you know, I was a shitty when I was a shitty kid. My dad would beat my ass to get my ass in line, and you know, I'm no better for it, right? It's like they don't ever come back with a story of how it didn't, you know, and I was still a shitty kid and now I'm a shitty adult. It's just like they don't, most people come back with that story and be like, you know, and I had it coming and now I know that that's the wrong thing to do, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it was improper to pull. It was
you know?
improper to pull the girl's braids in front of me that was sitting in class. Although I thought I was being cute and funny, but me, reaching over and grabbing her braids was not appropriate. Whenever I got home, I found out how inappropriate it was, and I didn't do that funny shit anymore, again. Right? It was funny in the moment, but my ass got beat. I'm not doing that shit anymore.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, in real life, if you'd gone out and done that as an adult or thought that was okay, you know, that would end up, you know, being a life-threatening situation, perhaps, or even like one that took away your freedom and your ability to actually have a life, and you know, getting charged, you know, by the police. So that's what's going through Dad's mind in those times, for sure.
And I think that's what changed a lot of our minds as adults growing up, was that stoppage of, you know, we're gonna nip this in the bud.
There's consequences, man. It's like you better get the consequences at home than somewhere else. Luckily, I got a really cool, I got a really good kid who does that stuff, so pretty happy about that. Fingers crossed.
It's always a good thing, but
Fingers
also it's one of those that just sometimes just the threat is enough.
Yeah, no, that's the way it should be. That's all my dad needed. All right, here we go.
Yes, but at the very bottom of this letter said, "Finders, definitely not a CIA front." So if anybody wants to download this and try to interpret it, that'd be great. This part right here is interesting. Redacted. I assume this is Jim Bradley. Also advised that he had been told that the documentation had been located in the WMPD files to indicate that Sergeant John Steicher, deceased, who had been a sergeant during the Finder search, had been contacted by a redacted who told him to step away from the Finder's case, allegedly redacted. So someone told him to step away from the case for some reason.
Why do I feel like it says Senator Joe Biden under there?
Well, and it could be anybody. I mean, there's, you know, I don't know who the finders were, but and I'll put this into perspective. I knew a guy here in Georgia that was a hardcore heroin addict that actually sold some really, really, really good weed. And this is a guy that got pulled over by the cops after rear-ending somebody, handed his stepson all of his pills, and then finished off his drink and handed it to him, and spent just less than 48 hours in jail, and was released and never suffered any consequences because his father is a politician. So it is not abnormal for someone that is high up to have an embarrassing child or someone they know that's embarrassing to them that could cause them political ill will to basically step in and say, yeah, you're going to step away from this shit. If you don't step away from this stuff, you're never going to make sergeant. You're never going to move up in the ranks. And, knowing that this guy now is deceased, maybe he was an older guy. He's looking at his pension. He's going, yeah, this guy's going to ruin me if I bring this stuff to light. So it's not uncommon for this kind of shit to happen anywhere in the United States.
Yeah. No doubt. I've heard tons of stories just like that. And yeah, there's a lot of corruption that needs to be kind of dealt with.
Yes.
Additional search warrant executed on farm in rural Virginia with support by Virginia State Police. No federal involvement. Evidence of satanic/cult ritual discovered. Based on observed documents, customs agent unsuccessfully attempts to gain access to evidence for detailed analysis for use in investigating possible exports, Neutrality Act, Mann Act, and child pornography violations. So this agent tried to gain access to the evidence, but was unsuccessful for some reason. And then a big redacted. Blank contacts MPD intelligence and advised that all reports regarding finders are to be classified at the secret level. Blank also advised that no information was to be turned over to the FBI WFO for investigation, and that the WFO would not be advised of the blank involvement/contact. Children discovered in Tallahassee were eventually turned over to the individuals claiming to be parents or guardians. No further MPD, FBI, or customs involvement. As far as is known, no details of blank involvement ever became public. Search warrants. Based on the information received from the source and from the authorities in the state of Florida, blank authorized a search warrant for the premises of blank, Washington, D.C. Search warrants were executed for the premises of blank by members of the MPD Intelligence Division on February 5th to 6th, 1987. Although no children were found, large amounts of documents dealing with child rearing and shaping were recovered, along with manuals for master plans and dirty tricks for enemies of the finders group. All this information was turned over to the Florida authorities for evaluation. And then the medical reports are redacted, and the psychological reports are redacted. 21 former finders have been interviewed concerning their involvement in the organization. They stated that the organization began as an alternative lifestyle in the 1960s, and many of them became disenchanted with the quasi-military order under the direct supervision of blank. Many of the former members stated that they feared retribution from the finders organization. In the case of blank, she needed police intervention to stop the harassment of the finders. In the blank case, redacted, was burned down and remains an open arson. In the blank case, members of the finders attempted to infiltrate blank. In the United States, in general, all members of the finders who had left the group felt that harm would come to them if they spoke out against blank. I'm assuming Marion Petty, or his organization.
Sorry.
Detective Blank interviewed all the family members who were willing to talk. Specifically, they all stated that Blank had brainwashed their children and prevented any contact with either their children or grandchildren. Members of the finders, according to family members, would stop any contact by sending letters describing explicit sexual acts involving current members, including photographs and drawings. In the Blank case, members of the finders attempted to take over the Blank family residence and force Blank out of her home. I might know who this is, but we'll get to that later.
I hope so.
Right.
Special Agent Blank of the Virginia State Police stated that his organization executed search warrants at the Finder's Farm in Madison County, Virginia.
Pause.
Blank stated that this group...
So, I actually... That's really weird that it would say Virginia State Police, because I happen to have a close contact that was a former Virginia State Police officer that found a judge and busted him with a lot of illicit drugs. And that's the reason why he's a former state Virginia police officer, is because he was told to step back and not talk about any of it. So it would not surprise me that if this person was found out being a judge that might have been handling a case like this, and people knew about his illicit kind of shit that he was doing, might have put a stop to it because of political pressure and being found out about the bad shit that he was doing.
I got high with the deputy sheriff of Norfolk when I was 16.
I actually had a roommate that was part of the Louisiana Sheriff's Department, and the reason that he was a former Louisiana Sheriff's Department is because he was, whenever he would do a drug bust, he would just stash a little bit away and then he would turn around and sell it. And he got called out by a bunch of minors for selling drugs.
Right.
It's just like, the life we live.
Right.
Sorry.
Anyways.
Appear to be a survivalist organization with attempts to take over the city government in Culpeper, Virginia. During Virginia State's investigation, information was revealed that bodies were buried on the farm at the Nethers, but excavation revealed nothing. However, cages were discovered on the premises that witnesses revealed were used to keep children during their visits to the farm. FBI investigation. The FBI had contact with the finders since 1971, including a recent report dealing with CIA involvement with at least one of the members of the finders, passing information overseas concerning activities of the Central Intelligence Agency. When it became apparent that no federal laws were violated, the FBI vacated the investigation. Summary. It is the writer's belief that the Finders organization is and has been utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency as a disinformation service, spreading non-essential, non-critical information to various organizations throughout the United States and overseas. This group, to the most part, is made up of overeducated non-achievers who lacked the inborn initiative to succeed on their own. Therefore, they fell in with a charismatic leader who gave them directions and self-importance. To the most part, this organization individually is harmless. However, when directed and monitored by a controlling factor, they are capable of destructive and illegal activities. As in any cult structure, the main drive is for the group, and individual values and ideology is lost. Therefore, when a member is asked to perform a task that heretofore may have been objectionable, he or she performs this mission for the good of the group. As to the abuse of the children, I do not think that child abuse was a planned tactic of this group. But as in any cross-section of society, sick and demented subjects belong to a cult as well. I do believe that the shaping of the children is a planned experiment of this group. As in the case of the Nazis, they strove for a perfect society, thereby in their own way tried to form a group of children and ultimately adults that did not suffer from the ills of normal society, but took only the benefits that afforded them perfection. Lastly, I do not feel that the finders have disbanded, as reported by their leaders, but instead, as reported in their master plan, have appeared to disband to prevent further detection by law enforcement or social service officials. I firmly believe that this group should be monitored in a general sense, and if further developments occurred, they should be noted. The second of these FBI
Man, that's
files
rough.
contains newspaper
That's
articles
a call out right there.
Yeah.
That is a serious call out of like, there is some shit going on and I can't put my finger on it, but that, I that's weird that that an opinion would show up in in like a police report or a filed document.
Yeah, I guess it's like a professional assessment, of the information. I would see that, a summary of the findings would be pretty standard, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it really is a call out, and also the fact that, hey, the idea is that this is one of those persistent cults, right? It has a mechanism built into it to keep itself alive, to self-replicate, and to avoid extinction, in a sense. So
Yeah, they
it's
basically
got a life of its own
just
now.
went more closer underground, and that's one of the things that I thought really long and hard about, as far as there's a reason for calling bad actors out, and bad actors should always be called out. And if you just and let me put this in terms that people might understand. Imagine that Alex Jones, for example, and I'm just using this as an example, is a horrible, wretched human being. Do you want to let this horrible, wretched human being be able to spread disinformation underground? Or would you prefer to have someone that's spreading horrible disinformation brought to the spotlight, give them every platform possible so their BS can be called out? Because whenever you take someone and you suppress them to the point where all that they can do is shill their wares on the black market, it doesn't stop their bad behavior. But
Yeah.
if you shine light on it and everybody can see the bad behavior, it becomes very important. That's why, censorship is in a sense bad, because you do the censorship on people of saying, we're not going to let the demented people of our society, we're going to put them into this little cage. You're not going to hold them back from spreading the bad shit that they do. They're going to continue to do the bad shit that they do. But if you allow them the platform, if you allow the Nick Fuenteses of the world to be on every platform, you don't remove them from the platform, but you bring them out and you mock them relentlessly to show the bad ideas that they have. And
comically bad ideas.
Yes.
I mean, easily call it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely hear where you're going with that, man. And it really does speak to the fact of censorship is not effective in a free will universe, and it's just it energetically backfires, and
Yes.
it causes some of the worst atrocities, but it never sticks. So it's always it seems to me it's more of a situational weapon kind of thing. It's like they can only hold it in for so long before it busts out.
Yes.
And so they use it at the right times, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
Let's go ahead and start this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking about too many things at one time. And I started reading the
Redacted
headline
version
here.
of the Tallahassee police reports, so we'll be skipping over that. The ballad of ballads can also be found It's an interesting read, but we'll also skip it. Remember earlier when it was mentioned that ex-members feared for their safety? Here's a small tidbit about it. Redacted, Petty I believe, operates out of a multi-apartment residence located at blank and uses telephone numbers blank. He has used a number of bank accounts to hide the funds obtained from the group members. Petty also utilized a warehouse located at blank. This location is a front for the organization and operates as a few distribution points for the needy. Blank
Interesting
is
cover.
currently blank. However, Petty will not tolerate anyone leaving the cult. Blank feels his experience to date with respect to the harassing letters and threats have all been related to his attempt to leave the cult. Petty also uses group members as enforcers to apply physical pressure as well as psychological pressure. He identified these individuals as blank. Blank is reputed to be blank. Both individuals are violence prone. Blank said Petty's harassment campaign utilizes letters to apply psychological pressure, and these are followed up by personal visits from blank. Blank believes both of these individuals also perpetuate the arsons ordered by blank. Probably Petty. Blank related an incident occurring in January 1983, which involved cult member Barbara Sylvester Matija, who attempted to leave the cult. She was physically restrained in blank residence. Matija subsequently became ill and required medical attention. Blank refused to allow her to obtain this attention, and she died on the premises. Blank said he does not believe that there was any police investigation of the death. On October 22, 1991, the undersigned received a telephone notification from Officer Blank. Officer Blank advised that he and two footmen have observed activity which they believe is suspicious in nature. The officers have observed numerous well-dressed males who operate rental cars and expensive luxury-type models enter the building located at blank at late and early morning hours. The subjects and their vehicles do not fit the area in which this building is located, namely the market area of NE. On at least one occasion, the officers have observed adult males with a young male child enter the building. This occurred after the midnight section had reported for duty on the streets. On another occasion, Officer Blank stopped a van after it was observed leaving the building in the early morning hours. The van displayed tags which were not listed to a van. The operator identified himself as Blank. He told the officer that he did research stuff. He also
It's stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is reminding me of a guy here in Atlanta around the time of the Olympics that owned a bunch of like really good property along the MARTA line. And the Olympic Committee came in and said that they wanted to purchase this property. And it was like not, they were offering such a small amount for it that he turned them down. He was just like, yeah, I'm not wanting to sell. And he used it for storage of like Hammond B3s and pianos and such. Yeah. And as the Olympics were building up and getting really promoted, they would come to him and they would offer him money, and he would just say, no, I'm not interested in selling. And amazing enough, each one of his properties that they were wanting to buy just would happen to have some homeless guy start a fire, and the buildings would catch up and like almost burn to the fucking ground. And then they would come back and they would offer him money again because, well, what use is it now? It's like destroyed your business and destroyed everything that you had. And he would tell them each time, no. And where did they build the Olympic Village? Just a few blocks over.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. This, crooked motherfuckers running around.
A-Town.
Stated that he babysat children for diplomats. Yep. The officer advised the undersigned that the building and the neighborhood is not fit for babysitting activity. especially after midnight. The subject's story was very suspicious to the officer. The van is listed to blank, white male. The vehicle is described as blank. The officer advised that, to the best of his recollection, this building is the same building which was raided by police approximately blank years ago for some type of child pornography. Now, the finders aren't mentioned here, but the fact that this is in the finders' files leads me to believe that this building, which was seen with well-dressed males and at least one child, was the same building used by the finders. Okay, so this portion of the video was way longer than I expected, so we're just going to go over one last page before I close things off. Blank was interviewed within the Office of General Counsel, Central Intelligence Agency, Langley, Virginia. After being advised as to the identity of the interviewing agent and the purpose of the interview, Blank provided the following information. Blank advised that he retired from the CIA on blank. He indicated that in February 1987, he was blank, Special Activities Division, Office of Security. Blank stated that his date of birth was blank and his social security account number blank, and that he's a white male. Blank related that the Special Activities section within the Office of Security was responsible for counterintelligence work, to include internal investigations of CIA employees, media leak investigations, and investigations dealing with the impersonation of CIA employees. Blank indicated that his office had a regular interface with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the United States Department of State, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. Blank was shown photocopies of his February 18, 1987 memorandum and a February 19, 1987 Washington Metropolitan Police Department report of investigation, both documents concerning the finders group. Blank was then asked to relate his recollection of the circumstances regarding his memo and the finders group. Blank related that his first involvement with the finders group most probably began in 1987 as the result of the media's coverage of the finders investigation. Blank advised that the media at the time was indicating that the finders had some connection to the CIA. Blank related further that he had looked into the matter and recalled that there were only 2 connections between the CIA and the finders group. Blank stated that the first connection was that, and then the next 3 pages are redacted. So yeah, all that's gone.
Wow.
If nothing else, I hope this video helps people understand the finders, as it feels largely ignored. Although there definitely was a lot of paranoia about satanic cults during the 80s, and admittedly, people do tend to fear the worst, I think the mystery of the finders is more complicated than that. In order to believe the official story, one would have to discount a large amount of other evidence and official documentation. Did Martinez imagine or lie about his findings? Did the medical experts incorrectly reported that 2 of the finders' kids showed signs of sexual abuse? If you want a much more in-depth look into the finders, I recommend The Conscious Resistance. He's done a lot of research into the finders, even before the FBI released their documents. His channel has an interview with Robert Terrell, where he still defends the group to this day. I also recommend We've Read the Documents. They've gone into this way more than I have, and I've admittedly left some details and names out. But this video should be a good brief overview of the finders. So, where are the finders now? They live among us. They walk beside us. They're hidden in plain sight. During the 1987 interview with ex-members, one said, "This is a group that for 15 or 20 years has done nothing but practice flexibility and invisibility. You will never find them."
Rough.
Hey, there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, what's to say someone like Epstein didn't step in and fill that void?
I mean, Yeah. We talk about secret societies, man. But I mean, who knows? That also means it could be barely nothing. It could be what we see in play, what we see all the time, but we just don't have a name for.
Yes.
You know, it could be, one or the other. Oh, yeah, the mysteries of life. It just never stops. There's always more. There's always more.
There always is. It's one of those rabbit holes that you go down and you realize how bad that degeneracy that people can go to. And I mean, you look at those two guys sitting on the stand, and they they look like a couple of cops.
Yep. There's the finders and the brain app here. Got all the connections, I guess, they were talking about, and some. You can drill down on that stuff and take a look at it. Some interesting kind of like description there on the side. Finders is a strange satanic pedo network linked to the CIA. One very interesting report by Ted Gunderson, who isn't the most credible person, former FBI in Los Angeles, who conducted excavations in the context of the case of K. McMartin. 460 children had talked about, that word and rituals and tunnels underneath the school, but also in villas around. Gunderson also worked in a network linked to the CIA called the Finders, which involved the CIA in the same way that the network Franklin Gunderson, for this case, hold on, in the same way that the network Franklin, I don't understand that. Gunderson for this case is one of the worst cover-ups made in the U.S. Gunderson wrote this report in 1992 and began by recalling that the U.S. and an estimated 100,000 children disappeared every year without a trace. It also notes that unlike car thefts are carefully identified, car thieves are carefully identified. Disappearing of children can't. What's that say? Contable side not what? Can you read that?
Which line?
It looks like there's two words mixed together. Anyways, I'll just leave that as it is. Also, I know that's not a real word. It's got like a tilde in it, man. No. Or I'm just seeing things. Comblabulices. No. Someone just do that in the rest with me. Gunderson is also peaks disappearances during the festival's satanic importance. Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, that's from this little description here on the Finders in this YouTube link.
Yeah. Damn. Well, and I you think about this.
There's Petty right there, the guy who talked about David Marion Petty.
Well, and think about this. Just give this a serious thought. Imagine that someone opens up a school, and they say, "Listen, the school is to help the kids in our community that don't have any fathers, don't have any, good, solid, structure. Let's, I'm starting this school. I'm buying a piece of property. I'm going to start this school. I'm going to do my best to like become a father figure for these kids and give them some structure." And everybody in a community or worldwide would say that is a wonderful thing. It is a beautiful thing that you're helping these impoverished kids that don't have any sort of family structure, and how easy it would be for that same person to go, yeah, but that's not what it's really about. This is my little cult, my little group. I've got them from a young age now, and I can teach them whatever I want to. You don't think about that. And so whenever you see, and you will see it, you will see these groups come popping up out of nowhere. And a lot of them are 100% legit. They're helping, the underdeveloped, the impoverished to become something. But make sure that, before you support some group like this, that you vet them out entirely. Find out what they're all about.
Yeah.
You have to be vigilant, and it's not that your kids are ever going to be involved, because it's a possibility your kids are going to go to a private school or public school or whatever, and they've got two parents in the family, or a mother or a father that cares for them and sends them to all the right places. And
Have you covered the group yet? It's a
Not
different
yet.
kind of cult. That's a
Not
good
yet.
one. We should do. I've watched that one before. Maybe we should watch that one together. That's interesting because it's one of those benign cults. It's one of those ones that you don't really see coming, and they're definitely wearing a mask of goodness in that case.
Yes.
they're
And
specifically
there's-
targeting Christian children and clean children who don't do drugs and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, undercover support group operatives. Maybe we can be her Charlie, and some of us could be his angels using Farrah Bosley and tell us.
I
all
see
the
I see a great parody in the works right there.
There you go.
I've already tried to do Charlie's Angels before, so
Yeah.
it could happen.
Well, and
you're right. Sissy would make a good Bosley.
Yeah, and it's one of those where I mean, the research on this, you can, because some of these groups are so unknown and unnoticed and so quiet, and they, it's like the Finders, where you're never going to find them, you're never going to notice them, because they're your next door neighbors, they're the people that you trust. These people are the same ones that come across as being a loving grandparent. Well, I have grandkids of my own. These people are,
They're always on the job. They're always on the, yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's a lie that these people are not caring and wanting, but a lot of people take for granted. I mean, what was that movie back in the 80s, Single White Female?
Mhm.
I mean, everybody can remember that shit, where it's just like, next thing you know, this girl's dressing up like her roommate. She's using her clothes. She's sleeping with her boyfriend because she found someone that was vulnerable. And that's what these kind of people prey off of. And they come in as very inconspicuous and slide right in there. It's like getting those DMs from somebody where they're just like, "Hey, I'm your buddy, I'm your pal. I agree with everything you say." And then, next thing you know, they're going, "Well, I need you to, show me some feet pics." What? Where in the hell did that come from? "Oh, I'm sorry, I was just joking." Whatever. So, I mean, you always have to be vigilant. If your red flags start going up about somebody, even if your red flags aren't there, keep them up, keep them aware, keep yourself aware of what's
Even
going
if you
on.
don't want them there, keep them there.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned that. I've definitely learned that lesson, and I definitely practice what I preach in that capacity. Especially in this world of just digital relationships, you have to always kind of like err on the side of caution, and you have to keep the red flags handy, even if you don't want them to be there. So they may go away,
Yeah.
but don't just dismiss them because you don't want them to be there.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, look, man, I totally appreciate you coming on tonight, dude.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think we've been on for like 3.5 hours. That's a long Unveiling Reality, the longest yet. We set a record. But thank you so much for everybody who's been here the entire duration, who has watched everything with us, because we covered some good ground tonight, and we got some great info, man. We had a really good time, and we got a special guest pop in by Shizzy Wiznut. Can't beat that, especially on this topic. And yeah, I just totally appreciate y'all being here. Shizzy, what do you have coming up?
What do I have coming up? I will probably do a game stream for a couple of nights, because I just finished off the Federalist Papers episode 2. And then I watched the at the very end of it, which is basically Rumble only, was my showing of the Ron DeSantis throwing his hat in the ring to become, president. So
All right.
I covered that, and so my brain probably needs a few days to process. And I may just like get on and just blow some shit up on the internet for a while.
There you go. I've been thinking of trying to do some kind of game, whatever, at some point. That'll definitely be in the works. I do have a new series coming out next week. Next Thursday. It'll be something new to the lineup. It's called Repairing History. It's gonna be based on the work of Thomas Sowell. We're gonna go through a lot of his material, actually all of his material, and we're really gonna get to know him. And he's gonna teach us a lot as we go through this journey. A lot of cool discussion gonna go on there. And this Saturday night, we're actually gonna watch a documentary about the face of Anonymous, like the real face of Anonymous. And we're kind of going to learn the Anonymous history as well. A lot of disinformation out there about that, a lot of misconstrued kind of stories, and a lot of credit taking where it doesn't deserve to be taken. But we'll watch that. We'll probably start on YouTube and maybe go to Rumble. I don't know.
Well, and
it doesn't really matter for me right now.
I also did develop a solar clothes dryer, and 1 Bitcoin, and I will send it out.
Oh, there you go. Hey, look, check it out. I'm glad you said that, because you just totally gave me the perfect place where I was going right now. I do have a Bitcoin address, and it is in the description. So it's in every description. If you want to send Bitcoin, that's totally awesome, because I have a Coinbase card, and that works really well. So yes. I appreciate it. All right. So, hey, thank you so much for being here, Sissy Wizard. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, mods, for being here and looking after the place. And thank you, Rumble, for everybody over there on Rumble watching, man. A lot more for Rumble coming. Pretty soon, I'm going to do my monthly Rumble over there, and it'll be like members and people that are where the YouTube membership stream used to be. I will probably just do Rumble over there as a kind of, a new place to do it. And maybe that'll turn into locals. I did pin up the locals, so please throw me on locals. Maybe we can spit up locals and it'll be worthwhile. I just feel like I need to offer people more than a board to talk on, like Discord or anything. I want to give them content. I want to give them inside stuff. I want to make it really worth their time and their money and the experience to be a valuable thing. So if we can make that work on the locals, then we'll do it there. You guys let me know, help me out with that, and tell me which direction to go. I do have 23 members over there already. So if everybody else joins in, that'll be even better, especially with people that are coming here and making this channel happen week in and week out. I appreciate it. I love you all. And for Shizzy Wisnut, I am Winning Reality. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I will see you very soon. And until then, you all keep winning.